What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV here, back again with another live stream for you guys. Spurs were beaten last night 4-2 away at Brighton at the Amex Stadium in what was a terrible result at the end of the day, albeit there was some fight shown at the end of the game, some positives to take away, but we're going to be here to discuss everything, and we're going to be previewing Sunday's game, 2 o'clock at home to Bournemouth after that as well. Joining me today to discuss everything that happened yesterday is Barnaby Slater from the Spurs On podcast. How are we doing, Barnaby?
I'm good. I especially like the way you didn't know what time of the year it was, what day of the week it was. You were like, is it Sunday?
Yeah,
I'm
trying to work it out.
It's that weird between Christmas and New Year thing. And the fact that Tottenham have lost as well has meant that our brains have gone fuzzy. But determined to bring some positivity after last night's depressing result. I think there are some, as you mentioned, I think there are some things we can take away from that kind of last 15 minutes. And sometimes, I have to say, I texted my nephew to say this today, sometimes you just have to put your hands up. Brighton were good. We couldn't handle their kind of intensity, I think especially early on. And sometimes you're just not going to come away from games like that with results. Yeah,
and I completely agree. And especially, considering at the beginning of the season, we all said it, didn't we? When Ange got appointed, the football he's going to try and play, how we're going to try and approach games. There are going to be games where we're going to get done. There are going to be games where we're going to come off second best, and we might have to take a few batterings along the way for this project to work. And maybe yesterday, to be fair, I think at 4-0, it was probably one of the only times, if not the only time this season, I think I can come away from a game thinking we've been truly outplayed on a footballing point of view, out-footballed by an opposition from a team. And to do that after 19 games into the season, I think, you just got to take it on the chin sometimes. You just got to say they were the better team. We're going to get turned over sometimes against really good footballing sides. And especially given all the circumstances, the players were missing at the back, all these kind of things. I think I'm just seeing a lot of negativity, essentially, is what I'm trying to say on my Twitter timeline. And I don't think it's completely warranted.
I think negativity after a defeat is just the modern day fan way. We all want us to win every game. It's not going to happen. I completely agree with what you're saying. In fact, Big Ange said it himself. There are going to be bumps in the road along the way. Last night was quite a big bump. But look, we were 4-0 down. At that point, I was doing the watch along. If you weren't watching, I was saying this could be 6 or 7. It could easily have been 6 or 7. We should have been maybe 3 or 4 down at half time, to be honest. And it wasn't 6 or 7. And in fact, we got a foothold in the game. And if that Pierre Højbjerg hitting the post shot goes in, Brighton, honestly, they were on their knees at that point. They'd retreated to their kind of 6-yard line. And they were fearing a kind of Newcastle against Arsenal coming back from 4-0 down, check Tiote kind of situation. And that it's important to take the positives away from that. We're absolutely kind of on death's door when it comes to squad depth at this point. There's not much more we could have done. We had, as a lot of people on Twitter say, like the triumvirate of players in the kind of spine that we don't want there, in that Ben Davies, Emerson Royal and Pierre Højbjerg. They all kind of pulled kind of 6 out of 10 performances. I'm not sure any of us thought likely they'd give any more. And we're against a team who want to press us high. They saw those players are playing and they're like, let's press them every time they got the ball and they won't be able to get out. And they couldn't get out. And why are we surprised? So, look, as you said, these kind of games are going to happen. They've happened less frequently than I think any of us would have expected. As you said, 19 games, halfway through the season. We're in 5th place. Don't forget, the same people who I think are slagging Spurs and Ange off a little bit in the timeline today were saying at the beginning of the season, I'd be happy if we ended up 10th or 12th because we've lost Harry Kane. It's a transitional season. We're going to have to learn how to play this completely new style of football. Well, we're in 5th. We're 6 points behind Liverpool, who are top. And there are other teams around us who have spent so much money and are longer into their project and who are struggling way more than we are. And I'm talking about Manchester United, by the way, who we will go to Old Trafford in a few weeks' time. And if we can beat Bournemouth before that, then I think we can go there as a bit of a free hit, especially if we get a good result against Burnley in the Cup as well. So, look, I don't want to run before I can walk, but I think Bournemouth's a huge game. I think we can bounce back. I think we will bounce back. But we have to take some of these performances where we're not, we've not played as well and we've not got the result we want with a bit of a pinch of salt and just say, look, things are not on our side at the moment. It's going to happen.
Going into the specifics of what happened yesterday, obviously, in terms of the lineup, I don't think anyone really expected anything different from what we saw. There was a predicted lineup that we predicted, apart from obviously Oli Skip was a last-minute pullout. He's another injury, unfortunately unexpected, but hopefully he'll be back for Sunday. the first half yesterday was probably, I would have to say, our worst performance of the season. I can't remember us being so thoroughly not just outplayed on a footballing point of view, but also bullied, I would say, by a really aggressive Brighton side at home, who I mentioned, before this game, have only lost one game at home, despite they have had some poor results, drawing at home to Burnley and I think Sheffield United as well. So it's not like they've been like invincible or impossible to play against, but they have only lost one, so they have proven hard to beat when going away from home. And in that first half, we just didn't seem on it at all. We were very much struggling not only to play out the back, it seemed to be, I don't know what the instruction was from Ange Postecoglou, but whenever Vicario got the ball, more often than not, he was going for long passes, especially to the likes of Heung-min Son, who, isn't one to win headers, or duels up the other end of the pitch. Sure. And it was very strange to see in that first half us kind of abandon a lot of the principles that Ange has set for this team throughout the season, I felt. Whenever Brighton got anywhere near our 18-yard line, we were being carved open, like we had no defence even there, it seemed. They were basically creating chances at will. In terms of I can think off the top of my head, the amount of chances Brighton had in that first half. I think Vicario probably made about 3 world-class saves, a couple from Danny Welbeck, one from João Pedro when he was through on goal and he does a delicate chip and somehow Vicario gets fingertips to it. They had 2 shots who hit the post. Milner hit the post. Van Hecke hit the post. They obviously had 2 goals as well. So it was an absolute battering in that first half. I think it's by no means anyone can deny that. It could have been 4 or 5. For you, if you take that first half in isolation, why did it go so wrong in that first half? Was it a lack of bravery on the ball from Tottenham to progress the ball? Was it just being outfought, bullied, second to every duel? Was it basically a combination of everything rolled into one? I was obviously in the stadium. I was actually sitting row 1. So obviously when you're sitting that low down, it's hard for you to see the whole pitch, what's going on. But watching it, obviously on TV, it's hard to assess without really digging deep, and analysing the whole game. But what was your feeling in the studio? Why it was going so wrong in that first half?
Yeah, so I think a combination of a number of those things you mentioned, but most importantly, like I said earlier, you just have to sometimes hold your hand up. I think Brighton had a week to prepare for this game. I think they know they've been in a stuttering run of form. They didn't have Europe before this game, and a lot of the matches they've had the kind of Thursday, Sunday thing. And I think they wanted a big scalp, and they saw this as a big scalp. So they looked, I think, quite deeply into how Spurs play and the personnel that we had on the pitch. And the reason, to mention one of your points specifically, the reason Vicario had to play more kind of mid-range to direct balls into the forwards is because they literally just pressed man for man from every goal kick into Højbjerg. Porro and Udogie not given any space to get the ball, and they wanted us to play the ball between Royal, Davis and Højbjerg, and they knew that if they pressed those players, they would win the ball high up. So that's one reason, and they did it well, and we didn't do anything enough early in the game to scare them that made them think, oh, actually, Højbjerg can take this on the half turn and beat our press, and then they're in. Whereas sometimes, if you have that ability to scare the opposition away from their tactical plan, then things can kind of change and go backwards quite quickly. So that didn't happen. And then the second thing I really noticed, and this is something I talked a lot about in the watch along, and I'd be intrigued to see what you guys think, if you agree with me in the comments. I do think there's a chance that with Pat Matasar, especially, I'm going to use him as the example here, but also with Heung-min Son, obviously, they're going off to their national their championships, as you mentioned earlier off air, their version of the Euros, right? African Nations Cup in Sar's case and the Asian Cup in Sonny's case. And I just think there's a chance that they are thinking a little bit, I don't want to get injured, especially Son, actually, because he's the captain of South Korea. South Korea haven't won the Asian Cup in something like 75, 80 years. It's huge for them. Now, I know we look at the AFCON or we look at Asian Cup, and we don't think much of it because the teams that we support, England in my case, aren't in it. So I think it's easy for us to think, oh, it's a bit of a Mickey Mouse competition. It's not. It's huge for these players. And I'm not saying they're not trying. I'm not saying that Sonny and Sarr weren't trying. I'm suggesting there's a possibility that maybe they were 1 or 2% off their absolute best. And when it comes to Sarr last night, I have to say, I don't want to dig him out. He's had a fantastic season. But there were occasions where he was jogging back. And I mentioned it last night. He was jogging backwards when Brighton had broken our press, and they just had easy chances as a result. Shots on the edge of the box and breaking through us. And I literally shouted at him in real time in one occasion where I was shouting. I was like, he's jogging back. Look at him. Like, Amir was with me. He's jogging back, and they made a great chance from it. And I said it at the time, I'll say it again. when Manchester United are playing terribly and lose, especially when they're live on Sky, and they cut to Roy Keane in the studio afterwards, he plays in clips like that where they're jogging back and they're not working hard enough. And last night, for some reason, it could be fatigue as well, there were just players who weren't able to give the intensity that Brighton were giving. That was the main difference, the intensity and the desire. Now, the irony of that is, of course, people were then saying at 75, 80 minutes when they were 4-0 up and suddenly we were all over them, why couldn't we have played like that in the rest of the game? Well, that was because Brighton dropped off. And that comes back to my kind of element of, it's a combination of those things. Brighton absolutely wanted this at the races, desire, wanted to show their home fans during a big Christmas game when the fans have been in the pub all day, the atmosphere is there. We're going to put in a performance for you. And on the flip side, Spurs, not the best personnel in the team to be able to get around it. Romero's injury, I think, is like the straw that's broken the camel's back a little bit. Because sometimes when Romero's playing at centre-back and has the ball, the opposition don't press him the way they press other players. Because they're like, he will beat me with a great pass between the lines, or he will drop a shoulder and give a little 10-yard burst of pace and then play it out to the wide man. So that was a really huge factor as well. But so, yeah, like I said, a combination of all those things. And sometimes you just have to hold your hands up. Brighton, with a better team, deserve to win. And they're going to beat teams in and around us at the Amex this season. That is for sure, especially if they play them at times where they haven't had European games before. If you look at their Europa League record at home, it's unbelievable. So when they're up for it, and it's important to them, they will absolutely turn over teams, and they did that to us.
And I've been looking at Brighton's home results as well. You know, they got a home draw against Liverpool. They have played very well against good sides at home, and I've also looked at the games where they have drop points, and there is I do see a bit of a pattern, is when they come up against really low blocks, teams set up to frustrate and defend against them, that's when they've really struggled. They lost 3-1 at home to West Ham. They obviously drew 1-1 at home to Sheffield United. They definitely do seem to be a pattern when teams come with a plan to frustrate Brighton and they don't let them play the football that we know Brighton want to play. That's when they struggle.
And what's familiar about that? That's the same with us as well.
Yeah.
Sheffield United at home, West Ham at home. In fact, Brighton are the first team, I'd say, really, I'm not going to count Aston Villa on it, but Brighton are the first team really who play a similar style to us, who have turned us over.
Yeah.
In all those games that we played so far, where we played teams who like to get the ball down and play, high pressing football, we have found space and have kind of dominated that game. Brighton are the first team who've done it. And I would say on that basis, sorry to interrupt by the way,
right.
But on that basis, I think that's where really our injuries and the fact that we are not as far down the line project-wise. I know it's a modern football thing to say project-wise, but De Zerbi's had that squad longer and has been able to drill them longer. Our squad players and depth-wise are not as deep in terms of they're not the players that Ange has picked, has bought, whereas De Zerbi has the players who he knows has the attributes. And they were just a little more ready for that game at that point than us.
Yeah. And I just felt like, obviously, yesterday, we were always going to play our game. We're always going to play the way that Ange has set us up to play. It's going to be going for Brighton, trying to basically outscore them. And I did feel like, especially in that first half, we very much did neglect our defensive duties. You look at that first goal that we conceded, João Pedro is allowed to dance around 3 players. And no one's really making a strong challenge. I think one player gets a kind of half challenge, foot on the ball. He's still able to retain possession. He's able to find Hinchelwood free in the box completely. No one near him, and he's able to finish it. I mean, I look back at the corner that we that led to the second goal. Heung-min Son is marking 2 players. Not only is he marking 2 players, both those players are Brighton centre-backs. Yep. He's marking Dunk and he's marking Van Hecke. I mean, who is organising from these corners? I have absolutely no idea what is going on. How is Son the one marking 2 of their centre-backs? And no wonder, obviously, Van Hecke gets his head on the ball and it leads to chaos and we give away a penalty.
I think I'd argue, sorry to interrupt, but I think I'd argue he's actually marking nobody because they play so zonally that actually there's no markers. And there are a few marking instances, one where Højbjerg was on Dunk, and that's a bit of a mismatch. They are bigger. I've said it all season in these watch-alongs. I'm very nervous when we concede set pieces. Actually, I think that's only the second corner of the season we've conceded from, but we very rarely get our first header, our head on the first ball. And then the thing that really frustrated me, I'm glad you brought up the goal, the penalty that was given from the corner. Really angers me actually more than anything else, or alongside some other things. It's a big pet peeve of mine. If you get lucky enough that the ball hits the post, do not then concede or give away a penalty from the kind of the pinball afterwards. You have to be like, oh my God, we've just got away with that. Get rid of it. Be the first one. Now, the penalty decision is interesting. It is a penalty, But I asked Amir last night, and I'll ask you now, if VAR didn't exist, would he have given it first? Do you think he didn't give it first because he's thinking, I'm talking about the ref, did he not give it first because he's thinking, well, if it is a penalty, VAR can get me out of trouble? Or do you think if VAR didn't exist, that's not a penalty because people are tugging at their shirts all the time?
I just think there was so much chaos happening in the box. I don't think he saw
didn't
it.
see it.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah.
I do think it was a clear penalty. I think it's one of the. I'm very much against VAR getting involved in shirt pulling in the box and that kind of element. I hate it. I remember there was one in the Manchester derby given early in the season where Rodri got brought down. I thought it was the softest penalty, yet VAR got involved because one of the United players had an arm around Rodri. I hate when VAR gets involved in those kind of incidents because I feel like they happen at every corner. However, I did feel like yesterday was a bit different. Welbeck was just literally about to line up a shot, and Kulusevski does literally pull him back. I think that was clear as day as penalty. I don't think it was like an instance of like half of what 6-1 half. Like I don't think it was one of those incidences where I really hate penalties being given. I thought Kulusevski literally prevented him from shooting.
I agree.
And I think that was a difference.
One of the things I was saying to Amir is I think actually Welbeck just plows that into the net if he doesn't pull him back. So what Kulusevski's trying to do is like get away with one, basically. I've got a slight tangent, but overarching question now. Why, is there not an argument to say, why don't they ban, as kind of contact is mostly banned in terms of pulling shirts and everything everywhere else on the pitch, why don't they just ban that from corners as well? Why don't, from the start of next season, referees tell all the players, just so you know, if you touch anyone when you're trying to defend them from a corner, it'll be a penalty. And after 2 weeks, it wouldn't happen anymore. I don't really understand. I know it's a bit more of an overarching question, but it's like, same with the handball rule. I'm not saying this should happen, and I'm definitely not saying it will happen because it won't. But if they actually just said all handball is handball,
anytime it touches
the hand, then it makes it the easiest thing to govern, right?
But you're just going to get a bunch of players aiming the ball at people's hands, though, aren't you?
Well, I mean, we've suffered most from that, right?
We have. Definitely.
So it's not like players aren't already doing that. Now, look, some games would finish 14-13 or whatever, but is there not an argument to say maybe that's how it should be? All I'm saying is, I just think, especially with the kind of grappling in the box thing, by allowing it to some degree, they're therefore making a rod for their own back because there's no possibility of consistency in decision making when it's totally subjective up to each referee. How much does it matter, or which player is doing it? Like, you can be sure that if Romero's got his hand around someone's body when he's defending, he's going to get a penalty given against him because referees are kind of alive to Romero being a bit of an on the edge player. But anyway, sorry, it's a tangent.
No, I 100% agree with you, and I think it drives you mad what's given what's. In fact, there was a clear example even last week against Everton. Kulusevski does something similar in the box, and that wasn't given a penalty. This one was. Obviously, look, we go into half time. Obviously, I think Richarlison has one chance right at the end. He hits the post, but that would have been completely undeserved. We would have scored that. We were completely battered. It should have been 4-5-0. But going to the second half, I know obviously the game did go to 3 and 4-0, but for me, being in the stadium anyway, we did come out in the second half a lot stronger. We did try and force the issue, show a bit of urgency. Richarlison had 2 goals chalked off offside, and he also had 1 save from the keeper as well. We were in the ascendancy, and as well, what was really unlucky is Gio was stripped off, ready to come on, and in that process, Estepinian sticks one in the top corner from 30 yards. So from that point of view, I felt like in the second half, that when that goal goes in, it probably goes in our best period of the game at that time, and probably that third goal goes in at the worst point in the moment for Spurs, because at 3-0, that's a real killer, isn't it? Because if we get the next goal at 2-1, I think there's a really good chance we get back in the game. But at 3-0, especially as Gio's about to come on, that the game's gone at that point, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I said it all the way along the line. Whoever gets that third goal, I think if we'd got the third goal, we would have probably gone and nicked a point. I really do, at least a point. But it's, much of a muchness now, really. I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe I was more negative in the studio last night and it felt a bit better in the stadium, but I didn't feel like Tottenham came out in the second half and really kind of gave enough to make me think things were going to change. And I think Brighton were just kind of toying with us for the majority of that game until probably 75, 80 minutes. Amir in the watch along was definitely saying he was disappointed with Ange for not bringing on Lo Celso at half time. I would say probably I'd agree, just on the basis that Sarr, like I said, had already showed me that he wasn't kind of able or willing to kind of put in the required effort. And at that point, being 2-0 down, sure, Lo Celso's not going to be the player who's going to be the engine getting up and down, but he is a player who's going to come and get the ball off your likes of Royale and Davis and Højbjerg, who aren't as comfortable with the ball at their feet. So I kind of agree with Amir that maybe he should have brought Lo Celso on at half-time and at least given ourselves a chance of wrestling back some control over the game. That's kind of my main kind of takeaway on it, really. But you can also look at it the other way, which is, yes, Lo Celso, when he came on, he looked, as he does, always willing to get on the ball, always sharp on the ball, likes to play that lovely little 1 and 2 touch stuff, get the returns, but also, giving away that penalty was mad. Because if you look at it in hindsight, and I said this last night, I hope be a big learning for Spurs, is don't let it get to 3 or 4-0. Because if you keep it at 2-0 in the Premier League, that last 10 minutes, which has now become the last 20 minutes, is absolutely huge. And if we'd managed to keep it at 2-0, listen, you can't account for him putting it in the top bin from there. But also, nobody closed him down.
Correct.
And that has actually been a regular thing with Spurs in terms of nobody closing down crosses and closing down long shots. And then also mentioning that, because this is also something Amir was talking about during yesterday's watch-along, we're not taking any pot shots at all. We're trying to score the perfect goal, almost like, 10, 12 years ago, Wenger Arsenal style around the box. These little moves that aren't working. We didn't get any luck with the ball kind of bobbling to us like they did for their first goal. But take a few shots. You might get a deflection. You just don't know. And we're not doing enough of that. And Estupiñán deserves all the credit for that goal because he did take that shot. So, look, that's the big learning for me. Don't let it get, if you're in the hole, if you're in the mud at 2-0, don't let it get 3 or 4 because you just don't know. And the reason I started talking about that is because I think Lo Celso, with that kind of lazy tackle from behind for the penalty, that was just stupid. He wasn't tired. He'd only just come on and he had a line of centre-backs in front of him who could have blocked the shot, I think. So, some learnings to take there. But look, by no means was this all negative. There are some positives, but it's one for me that we just, we go through, we deal with the depression, we remember it's Christmas, and then we push it to the back of our minds and beat Bournemouth and don't think of it again.
Yeah, in terms of, we did go to 3-4-0. The one positive we will bring up and we'll talk about is that late fight back that we attempted in the last 15 minutes. And just to credit the character of the team, I think most teams in the Premier League in that position I probably give up and just focus on damage limitation at that point at 4-0. Yes. And I am somewhat proud and I do give the team credit because, it was the goals that we did score, it was Kulusevski's pressing that, we didn't stop during the game. He robbed Lewis Dunk of the ball. Obviously, Son goes on to set up Valise, who gets his first goal for Spurs. We then continue to create chances. Porro obviously assists Ben Davis at the back post. We make it back to 4-2. And 4-2 with 5 minutes to go, plus there was 9 minutes added on for stoppage time as well. There were definitely chances there for us to get it back to at least 4-3. Højbjerg hits the post. I think Steele makes a couple of saves. I think one from Porro as well. I think at least what we can take away. I know you can definitely put it down to Brighton dropping off at 4-0. They probably thought the game was won essentially, and they definitely thought we're just going to see out this game and we're just going to basically drop off. And we've seen it how many times in Premier League when a team is that far ahead, they just basically see out the game and just play it around. And Brighton were definitely doing that. But I am somewhat proud, and I do think it definitely tells us something about the character of this team that at 4-0 we still kept going right till the end, and we did even give ourselves an opportunity to get back in the game. A lot of fans will rightly say it's too little too late. It's all well and good doing it in the last 15 minutes. Why didn't you do it in the previous however long 70 minutes? But you can't just write off completely. I do want to give the team some credit, and I think in a weird way, after that late show of fight at the end of the game, I did come away with it feeling a lot better about the defeat than I would have if we just meekly would have lost the game 4 or 5-0.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that kind of momentum shift can affect you going into the next game. And then also, I just think that's Ange ball, really, which is Ange is never going to bring defenders on when he's 4-0 down. He's just going to say, keep playing, keep playing. It's kind of similar to that Chelsea thing. We went to, 2 men sent off, and he was just like, keep playing, keep the high line, because it's more about the longer term culture and the philosophy of the squad and the club and everything. And I agree. I think there are positives to be taken from that. I wonder, honestly, whether, and I know this shouldn't matter, but I wonder whether if Arsenal had turned over West Ham last night, maybe I'd be more upset now than I am. It feels like it took the edge off a little bit for me, and maybe it shouldn't do, but I'm admitting it. But yeah, I think again, it'll be, the main takeaway will be that this is a game we can learn from. These things can happen, and if you don't turn up at 100% to a game like Brighton away in a Christmas period and a night game, you're going to get trounced.
Yeah, 100%. Before we get into the player ratings, let's read a few comments here from you guys. Maiden Bloke 664 says, credit the team, Sim. They didn't start playing till we were 4-0 down. Very poor attitude that has plagued this team for years. Nothing to be proud of. I mean, I don't think you can level out of this team this season. I just don't think so. I think the attitude and the character of the team has been pretty strong, especially given some really tough circumstances that we've had for a lot of games, which we've able to put in good performances. Yes, we were 4-0 down, and the performance up until the last 15 minutes was really, really poor. But as I've said, I think most teams in the Premier League at 4-0 down don't even try and mount a comeback and just try and see out the game with as little damage as possible. And the fact that we attempted a comeback and we actually create enough chances to get back in the game, I think it's probably more negative than positive overall yesterday, but you got to give the team some credit for not giving up.
Yeah.
That's all I would say.
Absolutely. That's the key point. Like I said earlier, it could easily have been 6 or 7, and it wasn't. They stopped at 4 and then started attacking. But I think also we have to say Brighton did definitely kind of sit back, take their foot off the gas a little bit. But yeah, credit where credit's due. And like I said, these things are it's strange, but these kind of last 10 minutes and how you affect them, and getting late goals, that can affect your confidence going into the next game. And I do think that'll help us in hopefully the first 15 minutes against Bournemouth.
Super chat here from Urox Beats. He says, we need a much better forward line and a better backup centre-backs and better midfielders. If Levy doesn't pay up this Jan, he must F off. Well, look, I think every team can say, we need a better this, better that. And I agree. Do we need probably another winger? Yes. Do we need better? We need any backup centre-back. Essentially, we're playing 2 full-backs to centre-back, 100%. Do we need better midfielders? I do take issue with that. Yes, yesterday's midfield, I mean, we had Højbjerg, Sarr and Kulusevski. That's a good midfield. I don't think we can use that as an excuse. We also have Basuma, Maddison and Benteke all out injured. Mm-hmm. Those are 3 of the best midfielders in the Premier League when they're on form. So I look at that as a collective of midfielders, and I just don't think we need better midfielders as an excuse for anything.
Yeah, I don't think it's an excuse. I think based on a lot of the rumours that are doing the rounds, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they're looking at someone to come in to replace Højbjerg. If we get the money for Højbjerg, it's that Gallagher rumour that keeps cropping up. But in general, yeah, when we've got all of our midfielders fit, then certainly those 3 you just mentioned are kind of second to none in terms of the first 11. But it's about that depth of squad, certainly.
Yeah, obviously backup centre-back, that's a must. We know that. I mean, we're playing Emerson and Davis at the moment. Better forward line. Yeah, a lot of people were very frustrated with our forward line yesterday. Obviously, I'm seeing a lot of people calling out Brendan Johnson. Son looked very much leggy. Obviously, Richarlison couldn't stay on side. But, I think in terms of goals scored this season, Tottenham are probably up there, aren't we? I think we scored more goals than Arsenal this season, who have been, maybe not as good, but I think only, who is it? I think it's, I can see here, Man City, Villa, and Liverpool are the only teams who've scored more goals than us. So
we should probably caveat that by saying we are also second in the table for the most goals conceded.
Oh, are we second most?
Nottingham Forest, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I said that last night.
No, I can't. I can see the bottom 5 all conceded more.
What?
I can
literally
see
heard that stat last night.
Sheffield United, Burnley, Luton, Forest.
Amazon Prime have lied to me.
Fulham have all conceded more, I can see.
Well,
but we have conceded 28. Brighton have also conceded more. Oh. So we are in the bottom half, but we're not quite second from bottom. That would be an alarming.
I apologise. Amazon Prime have lied to me.
All right. let's get into our player ratings for yesterday's game against Brighton. First up, we'll go with Guillermo Vicario. We both gave a 9-2. Obviously, again, in tip-top form. We didn't even really discuss it much in the review because even though he had a brilliant game, there was a myriad of problems that led to us losing. But I have to say, some of those saves in the first half, that one from Danny Welbeck where he makes a really great reaction save where it looked like Welbeck had the whole goal to aim at and he was able to keep it out. I thought that save from João Pedro where he's through on goal and he just about gets fingertips to a chip, or a lob, whatever you want to call it, was absolutely outstanding. If it wasn't for Vicario, we would have been completely out the game at half-time and it would have been 4 or 5-0. In terms of the second half, I know they scored 2 goals. I don't remember too many saves actually had to make in that second half off the top of my head. But first half, we had him to thank for the fact that it wasn't completely embarrassing in terms of scoreline perspective.
Yeah, I completely agree. I gave him a 9. I think I was tempted to give him a 10. The Danny Welbeck chance you talked about, I think he was actually on the ground when the ball dropped at Welbeck's feet because he thought a shot was coming in, so he was already on his way down in one way. So he's on his knee, on his haunches, and then he gets up, and I think he basically predicts. He takes a chance and guesses that Welbeck's going to try and place it in that corner, and as a result makes an unbelievable save. And like you said, the one-on-one, he just stays on his feet so long. The temptation is obviously to dive at the player's feet, but he stayed up and he got fingertips on it. Unbelievable save. And I think the best kind of compliment I can give to Vicario is the reason I keep not really mentioning him in match reviews is because I'm expecting it of him now. He's just such an unbelievable keeper in such great form, and we are very fortunate to have him. We'd be a lot further down the table if we didn't.
Yeah, and he just seems to be making worldly saves every week at the moment. And if there was... Look, at the end of the game, the fact that we still had a slight chance of getting something was down to him pretty much. Next up, we'll talk about Pedro Porro. I give him a 5. Barnaby gave him a 6. I just felt like it was a bit of an uncharacteristic performance from Porro. He looked a bit off it in terms of didn't quite look as sharp as he usually does. Maybe it was the team dynamic that he was suffering from, but he's been largely consistent this season, so I'm not going to give him too much criticism, but I did feel like yesterday it did feel like he was off the pace a bit. They were absolutely relentlessly targeting our right-hand side, and I felt like maybe it's because he was caught out of position quite a lot. In possession, obviously he did get an assist, so credit to him, and I think that makes him our top assister in a single Premier League season of all time. But and it was a great assist for Davis as well. But I felt like for the majority of the game, he didn't quite feel like his normal self, so I gave him a 5.
Yeah, I mean, I think the assist probably edges him up to 6. What I should also say in advance of most of the team's player ratings, and you're probably all going to abuse me for this, which is absolutely fine. But I say basically everybody, if they play kind of averagely, they get a 6. If they then make a mistake or something, then that brings them a rating down for me. But I'd say that Porro was kind of average amongst a team of average performances last night. He didn't really make any mistakes that, for me, dragged it down into a 5. But that's the way I kind of do my ratings. I thought he was average, didn't do anything particularly special. Like I said, the assist, I guess, drags him up. I could have given him a 5, but I just thought much of a muchness, really, and he didn't really make any terrible errors against a difficult team.
All right, next up, we're talking about Ben Davis. I gave him a 4. Barnaby gives him a 6.
And that's why I told you how I rate
there
people.
We go. And that's a prime example. Look, obviously he did get a goal right at the end, which boosts his rating up for me a bit. But I did feel like throughout the game, he did struggle largely. For a player who's been in really good form of late, I was a bit disappointed. I felt like Brighton were very much pressing him really aggressively. I don't think it was as bad as his partner, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I wouldn't say it was... His poor rating isn't solely down to him. I did feel like there was a lack of protection for him and he was very badly exposed. But I did feel like Brighton definitely exploited him badly and he did struggle throughout the game. But he did get the goal, so gave him a bit of a better rating. So, yeah, gave him a 4.
Yeah, I thought, other than a couple of very badly misplaced passes in the first half, he was basically up against it and just didn't do anything. I don't remember any mistakes that led to goals, for instance, from Ben Davis, but maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, as is my pre-explanation of how I do these ratings, I'm going for 6 because I thought he was just average bad.
All right, next up is probably the biggest difference in a player range I've ever seen, but Emerson Royale, I gave him a 2. Barnaby gives him a 6. I was row 1, so I was very close to Emerson Royale when he was defending our side, and maybe that's why I was getting more frustrated. I thought he was really atrocious. I really did. I thought every time the ball went near him, he badly struggled. I just, off the top of my head, remember so many times in the game where Steele just went long to Pedro, and Emerson just couldn't deal with it, and he was getting in every time. I thought his passing was extremely disappointing as well. I thought he was giving the ball away every single time. To be fair to him, late on in the game, he did help the team out quite a bit when we were mounting that late comeback, but obviously the damage was done by then. I just thought he was really atrocious throughout the game. I don't remember too many good things he did throughout the game. And again, a bit similar to Davis, I don't think it's completely his fault, because I thought the midfield was non-existent and it left him exposed, but I definitely thought it kind of exposed his flaws even more. And that's the reality. Again, he is a fullback playing a centre-back. I do want to give him that caveat, but if I'm basing him just on a performance of a centre-back, I thought it was terrible.
I think if you're, basically what you're saying is he's a fullback playing as a centre-back, so if he was a centre-back playing centre-back, I would have given him a 1.
Essentially, yeah.
Maybe I'm a little more, I don't know, maybe I'm just not used to these player ratings, and looking at all the comments at the moment, I think everyone's closer to how you feel than they are to how I feel. But I think you do have to take kind of circumstances into play, and he's playing out of position. He's got players around him who are not willing and able to show him options that he can give. He's never going to be Romero on the ball. We said in the preview, there's an argument for the fact that, and this is obviously going to cause big controversy as well, but I think Dyer is probably a little better on the ball than Emerson Royale is. Royale gets it stuck under his feet quite a lot. But in terms of what he's being asked to do, for me, I don't think he was responsible for any huge mistakes. If I was going to give someone a 1 or a 2, it'd be because they'd thrown in 2 own goals and they hadn't worked. They were Tanguy and Ndombele-esque levels of running about the pitch. I think Royale is a trier, and he is working his nuts off to be as good a player as he can be. I agree with one of the comments I saw there, so I can't see it at the moment, but they just said he's just not a great player. He's not an elite, for me, Premier League level player, but he's trying his hardest, and on that basis, I give him a 6, playing out of position against a team who are absolutely on it, and just unfortunate.
Fair enough. Next up, Destiny Udogie. I gave him a 6. Barnaby gives him an 8. I did feel like in the first half, again, a bit like the rest of our back four, he struggled badly to really what I usually associate with Destiny Udogie is his ability to beat a press with his physicality, get us up the pitch using his ball carrying ability, which unfortunately I didn't feel like was on show in the first half. I did feel like in the second half, especially near the end of the game, I thought he really came alive in that last 15 minutes. And actually, there was that moment, wasn't there, where I can't remember what player it was. They had 2 attempts to try and bring him down. They just couldn't do it. And Destiny just powered through. And he was a massive threat in that second half. And I thought his performance massively improved. But just like a lot of the other team, most of the team, his performance did really struggle in the first half, and that's why I only gave him a 6.
Yeah, I thought he was our best player on the ball in the first half. Very low kind of base level. Not many players were even getting on the ball. And then, like you said, in the second half, I thought he was a beast, actually. I thought he was just up and down. By the end, he was absolutely hanging. He was blowing. And yeah, that break where he beat 3 men, one of them tried to clothesline him down around his neck. And he was just kind of, as we got into that last 15 minutes, he was the player who they were finding over and over again in that inside left channel. And then I think actually sometimes he was making the wrong decision by giving it to Brian Hill, who was then probably not really making the most of the space he had. And, in a difficult performance of 6s in the main from me, I'd say that he deserved an 8 because he was a cut above the rest.
All right, next up.
Apart from Vicario.
Well, that's fair enough. I think that's true. Into midfield, we're going to be looking at Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. I gave him a 4. Barnaby gives him a 6. Before I just get into the negatives, I did feel like actually, and again, like most of these players, in the last 15 minutes, I actually thought he played really well. And I thought he was actually winning the ball back really intently. And obviously he did hit the post and he was actually doing a lot of good stuff. But unfortunately, that's where, for me, the positives end. Because I thought he was pretty atrocious for the first 70 minutes. I thought, especially in that first half, he was hiding. I don't think he was showing for the ball. I thought when he did get on the ball, he was taking heavy touches. He was showing a lack of quality, which we do know sometimes Højbjerg can show from time to time. I thought his passing was inaccurate. And I thought in general, again, especially in these kind of situations where we're playing teams who are going to be pressing us aggressively, who are not going to be giving us time on the ball, that's where Højbjerg really struggles in these kind of games. I thought he did yesterday. He did have a strong ending, so I gave him a bit of credit, but unfortunately, it was a 4 out of 10 for me.
I thought Højbjerg, it's easy to forget some things I find when you're very disappointed after a defeat. And I have somehow remembered that in the first kind of 10 minutes or so, Højbjerg took a couple of balls on the half turn that I'd almost never seen him do before and kind of beat a man and been a bit braver than I'd seen him for a long time. There were other occasions where he kind of was half a second late on his pass, and that ended a kind of a good move opportunity. But that is really who Højbjerg is. And the reason I've given him a 6 again is because actually I think, along with a lot of the players, he put in the effort. He just isn't an Ange ball player, and therefore he's not able to get a 7 unless... Well, I'll tell you what, I would have given him a 7 if he'd scored that goal that hit the post. I mean, that's worth talking about as well. That was actually a really good effort. But yeah, look, I understand why people are upset with him, but it's mainly because he's just not the right kind of player for this kind of style of football. So 6 out of 10. He didn't kick one in his own goal or do anything mental. And he worked his hardest. And we're going to see with the kind of next player that I am willing to vote people down when I don't feel like they're kind of giving their all. So Højbjerg, I'll give a 6, but I realise that I'm going to basically gonna get shot as I leave the building for saying that.
All right, next up we are going to talk about Pape Sarr. We both gave him a 4. Yeah, uncharacteristically poor performance I felt from Sarr, albeit I actually felt like potentially last week as well wasn't his best. I felt on the ball much sloppier than he has been in this season for the majority of the season. I thought he got completely overrun in midfield. I mean, you're looking at that Brighton midfield of Gilmour, Gross, and I can't remember who else was in that midfield, but you look at that midfield and you're thinking that should be a midfield where people like Højbjerg and Sarr should be licking their lips trying to dominate that physically, and they were getting bullied, they were getting pressed intently, they were the ones on the back foot, and I think Sarr was really struggling to deal with that, to be honest, and I thought it was a disappointing performance from him and one of his weaker ones of the season. Yeah,
as I said, I saw too many occasions where he didn't work hard enough. And that, to me, is where you start getting properly voted down. And he's my first 4 of the day. I was disappointed with him. But I'll say, as I did earlier, African Nations Cup coming up, probably didn't want to get injured. Some fatigue in there as well. Obviously, he had an injury a few weeks ago and has played every game since and pretty much lots of minutes in those games anyway. So he's a young kid. It's going to happen. Let's not kill him for it.
Yeah, fair enough. Next up is Dejan Kulusevski in the number 10 position. I gave him a 4. Barnaby gives him a 5. Obviously was guilty of conceding that penalty in the first half where he was pulling Welbeck's shirt. I mean, I thought it was, again, a bit of a quieter game from Kulusevski, especially him in that number 10 position. I don't think we saw much of him in terms of an attacking sense when we were in Brighton's half. I thought defensively, he was struggling to really contain Brighton. I thought we were so open in the midfield. I don't think he was doing his defensive duties as good as he could have been. I did think he looked a lot better once he moved back out to the right, was having a lot more space and opportunity to go up Brighton and attack. But there were a few occasions late in the game where he had a few opportunities to put in a good cross or provide something, and he was overhitting a few passes, and he, especially I remember one where he was looking for the back post and completely overhit it for a goal kick. The quality was a bit lacking for Kulusevski, I felt, and obviously the penalty he gave away was very, very frustrating, so I gave him a 4.
Yeah, I thought he was average and he gave away a penalty, so I take a mark off for that. There were also a lot of occasions in the first half, and this was sending a mere mental in the watch-along actually, where he could have had some shots and he didn't. He tried to play too intricate a kind of through ball. And that's frustrating because he has actually got a great shot on him. I agree with what you're saying in that he was kind of overrunning some stuff in the second half as well. But mainly just I would have given him a 6, but he gave away the penalty and it was a bit silly. 5.
All right, Heung-min Son up next. Started out left wing in this game. We both gave him a 4. Yeah, again, it's probably, I would say, the 3rd game in a row where Son has not looked particularly at his sharpest or his best and was definitely out of the game. And to be fair, he had, especially in that first half, he did have opportunities to have a run at Hinchelwood. And you're thinking he's got an 18-year-old midfielder who's basically playing at fullback in this game. He should really be licking his lips at opportunities to run at him. And I don't know whether he lacked confidence or sharpness, but he just didn't take those opportunities. He looked completely off the pace. He was losing the ball way too cheaply. Was completely a non-factor, I felt. Albeit he did have that one shot, I think, in the first half, which just whistled past the post. Credit to him, he did did get an assist later in the game, which for Valise, I mean, it was a simple assist, but he did get it. He looked a bit better, I felt, once he moved centrally. I felt he looked a bit more of a threat, but still wasn't really troubling Brighton as much as I'd have liked. And it just wasn't a great game at the end of the day for Sonny.
Yeah, I'm going to caveat this by saying I love Sonny. I love Sonny, the most important player at Tottenham Hotspur and a huge part of our success over the last 5 years. But last 2 games, he's been poor. I'm sorry, and I'm happy to talk to anyone in the comments. Come over to Spurred On podcast on YouTube. I'm happy to discuss with you in the comments about Sonny's performances in the last 2 games. It's not because I dislike him. It's not because I don't think he's the most talented player in our squad. He is. But something is not right in the last 2 games. And I said it to him before we started today. The unfortunate thing for Sonny is when he's like 5% off it, it really shows itself in the kind of almost like the easiest things about football. And in his case, last night, it was in his ability to pass the ball 5 yards, to trap the ball and to get the ball from out of his feet. And it made him look bad. And I have to say, you can see it on his face as well. I was actually really surprised to hear that he came out and did a press conference, an interview, after the game last night, and said this is a big wake-up call for the team and we weren't at the races and whatever. Now, look, I'm not saying he's taking away his blame in that. He seems to be part of it. Of course he does. But I think most importantly, he has to just get to 100% in terms of his level. And if it's because the Asian Cup is coming up and that's on his mind is elsewhere, then fine. And when we get him back at the end of February or whenever it is, he'll be at his top again. And maybe he's got a little knock again. I don't know. We're not party to all of the information. But you can't hide the fact that last night he was poor. And that's why did I give him a 4?
You gave him a 4, yeah.
A 4. I'm sorry, Sonny, it just wasn't your night.
Yeah, I do wonder if yesterday, especially against a team like Brighton, who do leave the amount of space that they do, whether Sonny centrally would have been the better option. But with Rishi in the form that he's in, we'll talk about him now, you can't really leave him out in that central striker position. We'll talk about Richarlison. No. I gave him a 5. Barnaby gave him a 6. I think when all's said and done, he was probably our most dangerous attacker, I think, throughout the 90 minutes, albeit he did go off on the hour mark, didn't he? Did it, which was a bit of a surprising decision, albeit I did think, obviously, we probably were a bit better after he went off, but obviously he hit the post in the first half. He had to force a save out still and had 2 goals ruled out in the second half, so it wasn't for the want of trying, but I think at the end of the day, the quality was a bit lacking. What I would say is for the 2 goals that were ruled out, the finishes were pretty good. Yeah. I'll give him credit for that. They were really accurate into the corner, but obviously the timing of the runs still not there for Rishi. I don't know how many offside goals he has for Tottenham now in his career, but he's got so many throughout his time at Spurs. Probably top goal scoring for offside for sure. But I think when all said and done, you probably have to concede he was our most dangerous attacker, considering how close he was to scoring.
Yeah, I'm pleased that he is now confident with his finishing. That's really good news and stands us in good stead. Another thing I said to Sim before, like, we have been blessed for 10 years with a player who is absolutely elite at timing his runs. I mean, I could probably count the amount of times Harry Kane got offside or scored an offside goal with one hand in a decade. And there's literally nobody in the Premier League as good as him at that, I would say. Haaland will get to that stage, I'm sure, because he's an intelligent young boy. But we are blessed to have that. And we don't have it anymore. And not many teams do. And as a result, Rishi is, at the moment, I'd say, it doesn't make exact sense in terms of the vocabulary, but he's kind of snatching at his runs now in a similar way to how he was snatching at his chances before. He's just going a half second, a millisecond too early. And it's interesting what you just said then. Maybe it would have been better for Sonny to play in the 9, because I think actually he would have timed his runs better in those opportunities. But, you know, if we're looking for positives, which I am, his finishing is there now. So if we make him the chances, I think he will get to, I've said it last night, I'm going to say it again, I think he'll get to 15 league goals this season.
All right, on the right-hand side, Brennan Johnson, we both gave him a 5. Has come in for a lot of criticism yesterday, and I have to concede it wasn't a good performance from Brennan. What I would say is, I felt like in the first half, he was getting on the ball more often, I felt, than a lot of our other attackers. He did set up that chance for Richarlison as well. He was getting to the byline a few times. I did feel like, again, a bit similar to Sonny, had a few chances to take on his fullback and decided against it. I don't know why that would be. I wouldn't say it was a lack of confidence, because he has been looking fairly confident last few weeks. So I don't know what to put that down to. Second half, I thought he was rightly taken off. He did struggle to affect the game really in that second half. But I do think the amount of criticism is a bit strange. I don't think he's been that bad ever since he's joined. I thought he's put in a few good performances. But yesterday definitely was one of the weaker ones. But I didn't think he was that much worse than anyone else on the pitch.
No, he wasn't. And I think the criticism is naive, to be honest, because this is a young player who we bought as potential. And when you're buying young potential now, you have to pay 50 million quid, English potential, with the English player tax, the English club to English club tax. So the reason why the hate is there is because people are like, oh, we've spent 50 million pounds on this player, we expect the finished article. That's not how it works anymore. 50 million is the new 100 million pounds. That's how it was. What 100 million pounds was a few years ago is now 50 million. You're not getting an English player from an English club who has scored Premier League goals and got Premier League assists out of their club unless their contract is running down for less than that kind of money. He's raw. Ange knows he's raw. I would say that he's played more minutes than Ange would probably have thought he would have done by now. I think he probably would have liked to have blooded him more in as cameo appearances from the bench, use his pace when defenses are tiring, and he's had to play because of the situation we've had with injuries and players having to come in and play in different positions, by which I mean Kulusevski specifically. I like Kulusevski in the 10. I think he's done well. He didn't have a great game, but I think Ange probably wants to, in a dream world, play him on the right mostly at this stage, but also is looking for another winger who can probably play both sides. Yeah, Johnson's game wasn't at its best last night. I think, as you said, similar to everybody else, he wasn't at fault for anything. It just wasn't his night. It wasn't good. I think I gave him a 6.
Yeah. 5.
Oh, 5, yeah.
For the substitutes now, we'll go for Alejo Veliz first. We both gave him a 7. Obviously, got his first goal in a Spurs shirt, which is absolutely delight. I'm delighted with him, and you saw the look on his face after he scored that goal. It was massive relief, and he was delighted with that. In terms of how we impacted the game overall, gave us a bit more of a presence. I don't remember too much he did do in general. I think he had one more opportunity, which he had a shot blocked with. I think it was at 4-2. Did give us a bit more threat, especially when we were whipping crosses in.
Yep.
But obviously I wouldn't say massively impacted the game in terms of his overall quality.
Yeah, give him a 7. I'm really, really excited for him that he got his goal. Imagine how he feels this morning. You know, he's got as many goals now halfway through his first season as Richarlison did for Spurs in the league the whole of last season, right? Now, that's not me saying he's better than Richarlison or he's going to play ahead of Richarlison. He's not, but he's a young kid finding his way in a new country. And what I'm really excited about is he genuinely gives us a different option, similar to what we had with Fernando Llorente when he was at Spurs. Obviously, different players. He was much more experienced and also was the slowest player I've ever seen play on a football pitch. But Veliz, honestly, really good in the air. And that does give us an option in that kind of last 15, 20 minutes in games like that where we need something different. It's devastating we don't have Perisic to put in those crosses for him, because I think Perisic, and I think we've mentioned this before, would have got so many minutes playing kind of that left-sided forward role in games where we're chasing it at the end. And Veliz, I think, looks very decent in the air and would probably have got a few more goals by now, maybe, if Perisic was fit. With
Son going to the Asia Cup, do you expect Veliz to get a few more opportunities?
I think he'll get more minutes off the bench. I think Richarlison's probably carrying a bit of a back knock as well at the moment. So I think him scoring actually will do him no harm in terms of his confidence next time he gets on the pitch. Maybe he'll start in the cup. It's a difficult situation because if we lose that game against Burnley in the cup, because he's giving more squad players minutes because we've got so many injuries and we've got people who are tired. If we lose that game, just similarly to the Fulham game, people are going to go nuts. But it's a difficult situation. I want us to play the first team, but I'm not sure if he will. We'll see.
Yeah, I hope he does as well. Next up, Giovanni Lo Celso. I think the rating's the wrong way around. It says I've given him a 5, Barnaby a 7, but it is the other way around. I've given him a 7, Barnaby given
He's just
given
assumed
a 5.
because I'm giving the higher ratings the whole time.
That's how it is. But I thought he had a really great cameo, to be honest. I thought he was definitely a breath of fresh air when he got on the pitch, and he definitely allowed us a bit more control of the game. I thought he was really, really bright. He was bringing the ball forward really well and was a big part of our dominance in the last 15 minutes of the game. Obviously, there are some negatives. Unfortunately, did give away that penalty. It was a bit of a stupid challenge. I looked at it again. He did seem to nick the ball, but he goes through the back of Ferguson.
Oh, come on.
He did seem to nick the ball, but he does go through the back of him, and then obviously that's always going to be a penalty. Did have a little bit of an altercation with João Pedro. I'm not 100% sure what it was all about, but as João Pedro was going on the pitch, he did say something to him, and it seems to rile Pedro up. But I think in terms of his play, if I'm isolating that on the ball, I thought it was another really bright cameo after I thought he had a really bright cameo last week against Everton as well. So I gave him a 7.
Yeah, this is showing a bit of a lack of consistency from me here, but I have my reasons. I thought Lo Celso did Lo Celso things when he came on the pitch. Very neat and tidy. Always wants to get on the ball. Stuff that I love about him. I think he's actually a really top-level player when it comes to that. Unfortunately, the penalty drops him a point for me from from probably a 7. I gave him a 5 in the end, didn't I?
Yeah, 5.
So from a 7, that drops him a point. And then the João Pedro thing I thought was completely nuts. I think we're like, what are we, 4-1 down at that point or something? And he's run about 50 yards to the touchline to basically begging the ref to give him a yellow card. Like, it's completely mental. And then he gets all the way to João Pedro and he's like, don't tell me you're so angry that you have to do this thing because you're so mad at him. Because at the same time, you're not angry enough to forget that you're going to cover your mouth so that nobody can see what you're saying. It was just in all for me, a really embarrassing moment. And wasn't a big fan of it. And I know the Argentinians can be hot-headed, but that just looked a little almost like premeditated kind of bullshit to me. Excuse my language. So dropped him another point. And that's why I gave him a 5. But I think he will start against Bournemouth and will be a key player. I think if we're going to win against Bournemouth, I think Lo Celso will have to have a great game.
Yeah, completely agree. One player we we did forget to rate was Brian Hill. But we'll touch on it. I'll touch on him. I did think he impacted the game positively when he came on the pitch. What I think he gave us a different threat in terms of a player on the left hand side, willing to go on the outside of his fullback and causing problems and actually taking him on. So that was positive. But unfortunately, when it really came down to can you put in a good cross, can you put a good shot, can you actually be a goal threat, I think the quality was found wanting for Brian Hill on those occasions.
Yeah, I think he flattered to deceive. I think I might even, if I was asked, I'd probably give him a 5 because, yes, he scurries around a lot and he offers an option on the outside, but his final ball was very poor. And then the air shot. Don't forget the air shot.
Yeah.
He was actually put in, and that's a great opportunity. Very similar technique needed to what Richarlison did when he was set up against Everton by Brennan Johnson. Use the pace of the ball, sweep your foot across it into the far corner, and he snatched at it, and it's an air shot. So he drops from a 6 to a 5 for that.
All right. Last but not least, we'll give Ange a rating. We both gave him a 6. Look, in terms of like the team selection, I don't have too many complaints. Again, his hands are really tied at the moment when it comes to players available. The only real decision when I look at the bench is, do you put Lo Celso on from the start? And he decided not to, and I don't completely blame him. Obviously, Højbjerg did start because Skip got a last-minute injury as well. He will be at a bad game. I can't really blame him for starting Emerson and Davis. They're the centre-backs he feels are best for the system at the moment. Could he have changed things quicker? Probably. Maybe he could have brought Lo Celso on at half-time. Maybe he could have brought Veliz on a bit quicker. But again, I have sympathy for him because Lo Celso was stripped off at 2-0, and while he's waiting to come on, they do go and score a third, and then all of a sudden that changes the dynamic of the game. What I would say is the way we approached the game in the first half and how much we struggled, how much of that was down to how the team was set up and how we were approaching the game tactically. You got to put some of the blame down to him. But in general, in terms of like the game management and stuff, I know he's coming in for a bit of criticism, but I think people are clutching at straws when if you're really going to put the blame fully on Ange for that defeat.
Yeah, I think just a 6, as you said, hands tied, not a lot more he could do. I think he looks at I think in terms of the Lo Celso thing, he probably doesn't want to rush him back too early. So maybe that's why he's thinking not at 45 minutes. But another reason I would say is maybe he feared that if we'd gone so open so early, we might have conceded a third very early, because if he brought Lo Celso on for Sarr, it really doesn't give you a lot running backwards other than Højbjerg. So that can be the only reason, I think. So yeah, I've just given him a 6, really.
All right, that is it for our player ratings. Let me know in the comment section below what you thought of our player ratings. If you agree, did you disagree? Bit of a difference in the ratings today. Before we get into the 5 takeaways, let's get into some comments from you guys in the comment section here. Jean-Paul Guerrero Lizarazo says, Ange is becoming Conte version 2,
What?
Keeping the bad players with the same strategy, even though does not give results. I mean, that is extremely harsh. Based on one game? I mean, I don't know if you're watching the football this season at all.
Can I make a point here? So I assume, and maybe I'm wrong, but I assume what he's talking about is what a lot of Spurs fans seem to be talking about at the moment, which is wanting us to throw in the youngsters, right? Wanting Jamie Donnelly to be on the pitch, wanting Alfie Dorrington to be on the pitch, for instance. Now, I think last night is a perfect example of how Ange is kind of damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. Because if he throws them in there last night and we still go 4-0 down after 65 minutes or whatever it is, those players may never play again for Tottenham Hotspur. It's so dangerous with young players. You often only get one chance. So what a lot of people are saying, I said this last night, but you know, I'm sure a lot of you weren't on the stream last night. That kid, Miley, at Newcastle, right? He came in and he scored on his debut. And as a result, his confidence lifts. He's like, oh, I can play in the Premier League. I can do this. And then at the same time, Eddie Howe's like, he can do this and puts him in again and again. So many players down the years, at loads of clubs, but at Spurs, they get one chance and then they don't play well and their confidence goes down, and in training they don't do as well, and then you don't see them again. They go off on loan and you literally don't see them again. So he's been careful with these players. And last night, I think, was just a perfect example. Imagine if he'd started with Dorrington and we were 4-0 down after 65 minutes. Do you think we'd ever see Dorrington again? And it wouldn't have been his fault. But fans would just be like, oh, he's just not good enough. I think he's being very careful with them, and I think he's doing the right thing. Yeah,
I agree. I think you got to manage young players very, very carefully early. And I think a lot of people just see people like Rashford or Rooney, someone brought in and hitting the ground running, and they don't those are like 1 in 100, where in terms of players who get a chance to just hit the ground running. TC says, these are professional players. All of our starting 11 are internationals. Please stop making excuses for their bad performances. I don't think any of us are making excuses. I think we're all calling it as we see it, and I think we've all agreed that Brighton were the better team. There's no excuse in terms of that being said, but at the end of the day, the players on the pitch, we can see who is going to be more suited to Ange Ball than not, and that's the reality. But I don't know what kind of. And no one wants to make excuses, I don't think, for the bad performance.
Well, I think, I just saw a comment there that was like 4-0 down after 65 minutes and you give them a 6 out of 10. I can see what you're saying. Of course I can. I totally understand that. But I choose to be kind of less reactive and more bigger picture. And there are just some times where the team you play against are better than you. And last night they were more prepared. They were better man to man. And they were they had more desire and less fatigue. And you have to take those things into consideration. That's not to say that your opinions aren't, just as valid. Of course they are. And a lot of anger comes into it. And, I'm sure you pay your money either to go to the stadium or to pay for your subscriptions at home. And it's all very valid. But I prefer to look at it in a kind of bigger picture. And I have to say, I'm just so happy that we've got Ange Postecoglou. We're playing football that's actually fun to watch. Last night, yes, we lost 4-2. But the last 10 minutes, we might have drawn that. Mm-hmm. And that's mental. And for me, I would watch games like that all day over the Conte stuff that I had to kind of sit through. And yes, maybe we would have won last night 1-0 away at Brighton with Conte, but it would have been drudgery. And also, lots of people have said, oh, we're on the same points as we are under Conte, but I've had so much more fun. And people are talking about Tottenham Hotspur. The people in the know, pundits, ex-players, they're all talking about Tottenham. They're all talking about Ange Postecoglou. And opposition managers are fearful of where we can go. And I'm excited about that. And therefore, even when we have these bumps in the road that Postecoglou said we would have, I'm not going to say, oh, it's rubbish, it's terrible. I'm going to say, it's going to happen. Let's be realistic about it and go on to the Bournemouth game and think, oh my God, we're going to play some great football. Even though we've got basically no one in our squad, we're going to play great football, make chances, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, and I think Surf South, I don't pronounce it. He says, for those criticising Ange, we are 5th and we lost our only real striker in Kane. We also have 8 first-team players out. Sure, he has made errors, but every manager does. And I think that's a great comment. I think people have to take everything in perspective, and to be where we are, considering all the circumstances we've been under since the beginning of the season, since Postecoglou got appointed, I think we're doing really well, and I think we're in a great position. And look, we're 6 points off the top of the league. I mean, there's got to be some perspective.
Nobody's doing brilliantly.
Yeah, he's doing brilliantly. Let's get into the 5 takeaways. We looked at 5 things we can take away from yesterday's game, and maybe some things we can learn from yesterday. And the first one is too open. Yesterday, Brighton had 15 attempts, and yet of those 15 attempts, 7 of those attempts were categorized as big chances by SofaScore, which is nearly half of their shots on goal were big chances, which I think goes to show that how open Spurs were and how easy it was for Brighton to really carve us open and not just create opportunities, but real good quality opportunities as well. And I think that was a consequence of our midfield not giving protection to the backline as well, not being able to stand up to scrutiny when being put under pressure. And I don't think I've ever seen a ratio of nearly 50% of a team's shot being big chances like that.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of that is about our inability to hold on to the ball. So we're trying to play this possession-based football, but when the ball is bouncing off, let's say, Richarlison was kind of unable to hold it up very well in the first half. It wasn't sticking to Sonny, and of course, it's not really going to stick around Pierre-Emile Højbjerg in midfield, and Sarr wasn't on his game. So it just kept on coming back at us. And Brighton pressed us really, really impressively. And you mentioned it earlier, and it's true. They did pinpoint those kind of wide areas. And one thing that is always on against Spurs in this style is when our fullbacks are inverting into central midfield, that kind of mid-range diagonal ball in behind the fullbacks is always on. And João Pedro, I think, was very clever to pull Emerson Royal out of position and get... You mentioned it earlier. What Pedro was doing really well was when the ball was coming over, he was getting his body in between Royal and the ball, playing well with his back to goal. He impressed me, actually. It's the best I've seen him. I've not watched a lot of him, but I was very impressed. A good signing for Brighton again. Their recruitment is excellent. And yeah, they were making lots of chances from those wide areas and then cutting inside and getting shots off. And another opportunity, to big up Vicario, who really saved us. It could easily have been 6 or 7 if those big chances had not had him facing them.
Yeah, and I think to create that level of big chances from only 15 attempts, I also think goes to show just a lack of protection of our... I just think that can only happen if a lot of our players aren't doing their defensive duties in the correct way, because otherwise people will be, throwing themselves in front of things. People will be getting in positions. And yesterday we were just so open. Every time Brian went forward, it seems like they were opening us up and creating a real good opportunity. So I think that was an incredible stat coming from yesterday. The next one, next takeaway is paying the penalty. And after 2 penalties conceded yesterday, Spurs now are joint top of the Premier League for the most penalties conceded in this season with 5. And I think that is something that I've been frustrated with. I think it's not just penalties, but I think Amir alluded to it. I was watching the reaction yesterday. I think Amir definitely alluded to it, where we've definitely been shooting ourselves in the foot on a number of occasions this season. A lot of the times it's actually been when we have been in control of games. But yesterday, maybe obviously we were under a lot of pressure and we did make a lot of mistakes. But we have been we do definitely make mistakes when it comes to cards that we get, red cards, individual errors which lead to goals. And now we're also top of the league for penalties. So definitely something for Ange to look at and try and address why we make a lot of these errors. But maybe it's a consequence of the way we play.
Totally. But also, there was that stat, wasn't there, that in the first 10 games, Romero hadn't given away a single foul or something.
Yeah.
I don't remember giving away a lot of pens in the first kind of 10 games when we had Romero and Van der Ven fit. I think a lot of this is a consequence of the difficult situation we're in, having to play 4 fullbacks along the back line. But yes, it's an interesting one as well, though, because that first goal last night, I think, was caused, and we've conceded quite a few goals, I think, this season. In the past couple of months especially, they've been caused by our defenders not wanting to commit a pen, if you know what I mean. Like hands behind their backs, being a little afraid of those kind of 50-50 balls, the pin ball around the box. And that's what happened with that first goal. Like no one was willing to take responsibility and just plough through and clear that ball. And that's how it came across to the fullback who scored. So there's a bit of half and half there, I think. But yeah, it's disappointing. Amazed me that last night it was I think it was João Pedro's 7th and 8th pen, or 8th and 9th pen of the season. We've had 1, I think. Wouldn't mind us getting a few of those penalties, thank you very much. But yeah, we've conceded a lot. It's going to happen, all part of the transition. Not looking for excuses, but all part of the transitional season that we've got this season. And please, let's get Mickey van der Ven and Christian Romero back quite soon. Definitely.
I think that is a must. Next takeaway is quiet Son keeps producing. And despite, Son having a poor game by his standards for sure yesterday, definitely has been maybe a bit off it last couple of weeks. He was able to grab himself an assist near the end of the game to make it 4-1. And that actually means after that assist, he now tops December for goal contributions this month. So, which is interesting to think about, because I don't consider this month as a month that Sonny's been in blistering form, maybe compared to maybe other months, but he's actually got more goal contributions now than any other player in the Premier League this month with 7, which is actually quite a decent total as well. That is off the back of against Man City, he got a goal and an assist. Against Newcastle, we got a goal and 2 assists. Against Everton, he got a goal, and now he got an assist against Brighton. So I think it just goes to show the quality of Sonny, that even when he's not his best, he can still pop up with and still contribute going forward.
And that's what happens when you've got a world-class player. Heung-min Son is arguably our only world-class player. I mean, you'd say Christian Romero probably as well, because he's won the World Cup. It doesn't get much more world-class than that. But let's face it, Lionel Messi gave him quite a lot of help in that. But Sonny is genuinely world-class, elite-level footballer. So even when he's not at his best, the ball comes to him, and I think especially with Sonny, one of the most instinctively brilliant players ever. Sometimes with Son, if he's got too much time to think about something, that's when it can go slightly awry. But when it's instinctive, like when he got in the box yesterday, and a lot of people would just plow their laces through that ball. He saw Valise was free, and gave him that ball, and that's why he gets the assist. 7 goal involvements in a month is very impressive. Go and have a good Asian Cup, Sonny, after the Bournemouth game. Come back fit and ready. We're going to need you in those last 4 or so months.
Any possibility of a player of the month shout, even though he's maybe not been at his best? If you're topping the month for goal contributions, you got to be in maybe a nomination.
Yeah, might be in for a nomination.
Be interesting.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he got it though.
Yeah, true. Solanke has been brilliant. Next takeaway is Porro provides. And after Pedro Porro, again, similar to Son, didn't have his best game, probably one of the weaker games of the season. He did end up with the game with a really good assist for Ben Davies late in the game. And that actually makes it his 7th assist of the season. And after that assist, that means no defender has ever had, or no fullback, I should say, has never had more assists in a single season now than Pedro Porro. We're only halfway through the season as well. And I think that goes to show how amazing, I think we all knew the quality that Pedro Porro has in the final third, but now it's really great to see it statistically basically borne out that this guy creates so many chances throughout a game. He can really put the ball on a sixpence with his delivery. Got another really good assist yesterday, and I think as well, when it comes to goal contributions, since he come into the Premier League, only Trent has more goal contributions from a fullback as well than Pedro Porro. And I think he's really been this season one of the most consistent performances. And I think he's a very underrated fullback.
Yeah, I think that's what you get more opportunity to get that many kind of assists when you're playing in central midfield as a fullback, basically. But that's not a negative, that's a positive. And I think I said it the other day, I expect Porro to score a few goals in the second half of the season as well. I think as our players start getting back fit and Maddison's around him, what will naturally have to happen is that opposition teams will pay more attention to some of those other players who are deemed more dangerous, and Porro will therefore kind of crop up in places where he's not able to at the moment and will probably get on the end of you. It wouldn't surprise me if he ends up with kind of 3 or 4 league goals to go with his many assists. And it shows that even though we were nervous, I think, when we paid that much money for him a year ago, it shows that it was a very wise investment because he can play this role under Ange, and his valuation now is far exceeds what we paid for him, and therefore, you know, his confidence will grow. And I think we're going to have. I actually think, in terms of our fullbacks over the next few years, nobody is going to better the fullbacks that we've got, and it's going to be incredibly exciting.
I completely agree. And look, with that 7 assists now, that he could easily make that, you know, get into double digits for assists this season. When it comes to, in your mind, like, in terms of ability on the ball, like offensively, apart from maybe Trent, do you see a better fullback in the league at the moment?
No, I can't think of any to rival him or Destiny Udogie in different ways. They're different styles of players. But in terms of fullbacks, you know, I think we have finally replacements for Rose and Walker in terms of the danger that we can cause from those fullback areas, in this case in an inverted way. So very exciting. And I think I said it the other day, it wouldn't surprise me if Udogie makes it into the team of the season, and he'll be up for Young Player of the Year in the Premier League this season, I predict.
All right, and last takeaway is tight at the top. And obviously, despite a poor defeat yesterday, and we were very frustrated having lost the game against Brighton, if you take the whole table into context, where we stand after that defeat, I know we're in 5th position, but we're still only 6 points off first place in the league. After Arsenal's defeat to West Ham, we're still only 4 points off second place Arsenal as well, albeit West Ham in 6th place have cut the gap between 6th and 5th to 3 points, so definitely closing the gap in terms of the other European positions. But it is so incredibly tight at the top of the league. Despite that defeat, I mean, it doesn't really change the playing field of what we're really fighting for and our position in the table. And yes, we did suffer a really bad defeat, and Man City won, so they're now above us with a game in hand. But you just got to give the team credit for where we are on the table, because you look at that table, and I think everyone, any Spurs fan, would have taken this position at the beginning of the season. Totally.
I don't think we should think too much about Man City, to be honest, because they are the only club in the league capable of going on like a 18-match winning run, and that may well happen. They seem to, I think, have in my opinion, kind of put a lot of time and effort behind that kind of World Club Championship. They wanted to be deemed to be world champions. They're banging on about it a lot. They've got the gold plate on the shirt, and Pep's talking about it a lot. I think maybe that's taken their mind off the Premier League a little bit in the last kind of 5 games or so. They got a good win at Everton, and I think they will probably end up winning the title. But as you said, the fact that we're in 5th place and only 3 points off Villa, who are, I think, a bit ahead of themselves, they haven't really, although Villa fans will get at me, they haven't had an injury crisis the size that, say, that we have, or Man United or Newcastle have had. If they were to lose a couple more players through injuries, I think they might struggle a little bit. And then I think it's really much of a muchness. I think we're ahead of Newcastle are down in 9th, by the way, so they're really struggling. Man United, I think, are maybe 5 or 6 points behind us, but like I said, I think they are always liable to throw in a terrible performance every other game, if not more. So I think we'll be battling for that 4th and 5th place for most of the season, if not better. And that's incredibly exciting for me. Like, was not expecting that at this stage. And look, if Ange said, didn't he? He came out, he said that nothing magical is going to happen in this transfer window. But if we could get 1 or 2 in that he really rates, that could be really good as well.
Yeah, and we could easily be in like Newcastle's position or like Man United's position. I don't think that would have been completely unexpected if we were, given a lot of the start of a project, new manager, and all those circumstances. So I just think, looking at the position of the table, it was a bad defeat yesterday. And I know everyone can say if we would have won, we'd be in this or that position, but you can only really deal with the challenges that come your way. It was a bad defeat. We'll be beaten by a better team, but if we can get a win against Bournemouth, again, that all starts to look very, very different again. So we're just got to keep blocking away. Yeah. But that is the 5 takeaways. Let me know in the comment section below what your 5 takeaways are and if we missed anything. Let's get into some super chats before we get into reacts. Actually, if you want to open up Twitter, you can open up Twitter on that computer. And so you can, if you go onto our profile and just go and click on likes, that's what we're going to be reacting to. So you can kind of follow along. Andrew Dean says, his super chat says, how is Ben and the baby doing? Number 1. And Spurs games keep being chosen for TV broadcast. You know, if the club gets bigger share of the broadcast because of that. Oh, is it not logged in? Oh, that's a bit annoying. Ben is doing great. The baby is doing fine. Thank you very much. He's obviously being up at night, with the baby crying and stuff. So thankfully, Barnaby's been filling in admirably, and he's been doing very, very well.
I have no children, so I'm able to fill in.
So I really, really appreciate that. In terms of Spurs getting a bigger share of the TV broadcast because they're getting more games shown on TV, I mean, I'm sure they are. Maybe
I think from what I know, I think you get like a one-off fee for any game that is played at your stadium, kind of to cover the costs of the tech and more. I think it used to be about 300 grand, I think.
Right.
It used to be about 300 grand, but then obviously it doesn't, I don't think it adds more in terms of like the overall money that comes into each club from the broadcasters. Could be wrong though.
Josh of VFTA says, Barnaby is a really quality addition to the channel, provides a much needed holistic perspective and calms down reactionary nonsense. Come on, you Spurs. I think
Not everyone agreeing with that, I think it's fair to say. But thank you very much.
Paul Abraham says, minor rotation and gradual introduction of our youth is key. Managing players is different from managing a team and just focusing on building a particular playing style without building a team. I completely agree with that. And look, it would help if kind of youth players maybe were getting sprinkled in minutes here and there, but I think a lot of people are calling for starts for a lot of these players, and maybe that's a bit put ahead of the game. HM Spurs says, Son is also one of our best players this season, 15 goals and assists so far, I think. Hard to disagree with that. I think he's having a great season overall. I think in general, when he's been out wide, it's been... I think overall, if I look at the season as a whole, I think he started the season with his first 3 performances on the left. And then obviously the last 3 games, I think it's 3 or 4 games now, he's been on the left-hand side. And I think in general, he just hasn't been as effective on the left as he's been up front. I know he had that great performance against Newcastle. I think against maybe Man United at the beginning of the season, he had a pretty decent performance out on the left. But I think in general, most of his good performances have been in the central position.
Yeah. I think he's looked dangerous area, but I think he's looked not great in the last couple of games. Something not quite right with him. But the game against Trippier, Newcastle, he really took him to town there, and they've just defended against him pretty well in the last couple of games, kind of backed off him. And if they don't if the defender against Sonny doesn't really commit to something in terms of trying to tackle him, that's where Son really takes it past the defender easily. And they've been kind of defending pretty well against him the last couple of games. So we'll see. He's a great finisher. He's an elite finisher at number 9. But Richarlison has now got that as well. And who comes in on the left, really, if you play Son on the 9? You're swapping them round, really. And I'm not sure Richarlison's really going to offer more than Sonny does out wide on the left. So I think that's why Ange is playing them where they are at the moment.
Tom81 says Barnaby, a great addition, just a little generous on his ratings. That's what I would say.
I've realised that.
Simon Ulster says some of our so-called supporters' comments are disappointing, calling Ange out. We need to relax because we actually have a long-term plan, but I do feel some of these teams go out to be aggressive. Yeah, and I think, look, as we get more success and as we we start to get more wins, people are going to come with plans for us, and we're going to get more noticed. And I think Villa are suffering from that as well recently, and that's going to happen to teams, as we get figured out during the season.
I think the aggressive thing is a good point actually, and worth mentioning. I do feel like one of the things that opposition managers are telling their team is to get into us, and we are facing teams who are committing a lot of what I would call professional fouls to stop us in situations where we're trying to break the press. It's something that Pochettino was elite at. We were elite at that when we played under Pochettino, stopping the opposition when they were in transition. And teams are doing that with us really, really cleverly, but also kind of just leaving their foot in a little bit and going in hard. They feel like maybe we're a bit of a soft touch at the moment, or maybe that it will wind us up and we'll react. And for some reason, I feel like, no conspiracy, but I feel like referees are letting the teams we play off with a lot of kind of yellow cards that maybe should be yellow cards. And if they were given yellow cards earlier in the game, that would stop them from playing in that kind of manner. And we've not kind of worked out yet how to deal with that.
All right, we're going to get into reacts. Now, before we do that, we've been going for a while. Do you want a bottle of water or something? Do you need a drink?
I'm all right.
I'm right. Can I get one, Sammy?
All right, if you're getting one, I'll have a bottle.
I'll get one. Before we start.
We're shattering the illusion here.
Exactly. Come on. Cheers.
Thank you, mate. That's awesome.
Thank you. All right. Let's get into reacts now. So we're going to be looking at how X reacted to the game yesterday and reacting to various opinions and some videos and stuff like that. If you just go into the likes, it's on our liked tweets.
Where is that?
It's there, so you know where posts. There you go, likes. You just there we go, follow along there. All right, so the first one comes from THFC Report. There's Vicario showing his frustration after yesterday's defeat. Obviously, he must look, having put in such a good performance and such an effort for him. I can understand his frustrations after yesterday. He's so full of passion, isn't he? That's one thing as well that I think a lot of people notice about Vicario. He's not just like a great keeper, but he's come in with such passion and such personality as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, definitely. I hope he hasn't injured his hands smacking the M of the Amex Stadium sign there. No, he's been an absolutely brilliant signing. And as I mentioned earlier, if we hadn't had him this season, I think we would be probably down with the Newcastle's 9th, 10th, 11th. Made some crucial saves, very brave when it comes to coming to crosses. And I think, as most goalkeepers have to be a leader as well, not afraid to shout at his defenders. Lovely, passionate guy, and comes across really humble as well. I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah, definitely. And shows his passion every game. Bread Roll says, I think he's talking about, I think this is a picture of Sonny here. It says, man is taped again, starring every game, running like crazy for 90 minutes week in, week out. But you will hear he gives nothing. Feels like last season all over again, and I hate it. I mean, there are people, just calling out a poor performance when they see it. I understand Sonny always gives his all for the team.
Yeah.
And even when he's injured, it was a bit frustrating for me to hear last season that he was playing pretty much the whole season through a hernia injury, which he could have got sorted at some point, but he put it off for the good of the team. And unfortunately, I feel like players, when they do that more often than not, are just hurting the team overall because they're so committed to not having missed out. Same with Richarlison as well. Mm-hmm. He needed surgery and put it off. But I don't think anyone's accusing him of not giving his all for the team, are they?
No. That's interesting. I'd not seen this one before, and I'd not noticed last night that he had some tape behind his right knee. One thing I did say throughout the watch-along, though, is, either it looks like maybe he's thinking of the Asian Cup, or maybe now it's just more likely that he is carrying a little knock. I did wonder if that was a situation that was possible. And I do, as I said before, I do think when Sonny is playing with a little knock, you really notice it with the small things, the kind of what I deem to be the easier things, the controlling of the ball and the 5-yard passes. So, yeah. Well, I hope it doesn't get worse. because Sonny is vital to us.
100% agree. Next up, this comes from Coco. They're replying to a tweet from James Davis who says, Son needs dropping. His head's been in Korea for weeks, certainly not motivated for the team, it seems. And Coco tweets that saying, league best in goal contributions this month and has played almost every minute possible. But James says his head's in Korea. Imagine being objective. So two very differing opinions on Son's recent form. As I say, yeah, look, he does lead the league at the moment for league goal contributions. So I don't think does those accusations then that he needs dropping, do they ring hollow a bit?
Just before I get into that, my favourite part of Coco's reply there is that he's actually typed out the 3 Union Jacks. Yeah. He hasn't even linked, tagged him. He's just typed it out himself. Look, Sonny gives 100% all day, every day. He lives and breathes this shirt, and as you know, I've said I've wondered if he's been thinking about the Asian Cup, but now I'm more prone to wonder if he's just carrying a knock and he's playing through the pain. I agree with you, mate. When they play through the pain, it only does harm in the long term. His injury's not going to get better by carrying on playing. And to be honest, I would say if he is carrying a knock, I'd say probably don't play against Bournemouth. We bring someone else in. You can play at 100%, and you take a couple of weeks off before your first Asian Cup game to make sure you're really good for it, because you can guarantee that Jurgen Klinsmann's going to start him in every game. In that Asian Cup tournament.
100% agree with that. Craig _ Pankhurst says Spurs fans have seen this script time and time again when playing some of the players who started tonight. Their weaknesses exacerbated when trying to play the ball out the back. A triangle of Emerson, Davis and Højbjerg is not a trio comfortable in possession. Obviously something we have touched on throughout this conversation, that trio, you feel that putting too much emphasis on those three probably distracts from what the real problems were from yesterday.
I'd also say, and I've said, that when you've got those 3 players playing together, it probably does drop your ability to play this kind of football by at least 10%. It just does. But I would also say I don't think they didn't try their best, and I don't think they were responsible directly for any of the goals. But yes, it's true. Until Ange is able to fully kind of clear out the players who have the kind of mental traumas of Spurs' lack of success, getting close to things but not getting over the line of the last 10 years, of which, Davis is an example. I actually think he'll make a good squad player, potentially a fourth centre-back, but it seems to me like Ange is keen to kind of bring in a new era, and so it wouldn't surprise me at all. Emerson's an interesting one because he's a big trier, and I know Ange likes him, but Ange must know that he's not right for this style either. So it wouldn't surprise me if we got some interest in Emerson Royale in the summer if he was going to. And I wouldn't go so far as to say, oh, it's as simple as we've seen the script time and time again, because we've also won a lot of games when those players have been playing too. But I understand what you're saying, Craig Pankhurst, and to be honest, it's not a huge surprise when those players play and we don't get over the line.
This one is from Gus. He says, this is a video of Son, obviously seems to be shouting at Brian Hill. He says, this man is the only captain out there. Both of the vice captains have been absent for long stretches. I'm not sure what more we can ask of him. In terms of how Sonny has really acclimatized to that captain's role, obviously we have seen various clips of him, bringing people together, always encouraging players. That's and being kind of a lovable figure, which is what we associate with Sonny. But have you seen more of this kind of side? Him being a bit more forceful with his teammates as well.
I haven't seen a lot of this down the years, to be honest. But it shows he's got it in him. I'm not sure. I don't know what moment exactly he was having a go at Brian Hill at. Maybe it was one of those times he reached the byline and just picked the wrong decision. I'd be surprised if it was the time he had the air shot, because that's just like you're having a go at him for just not being good enough at that point. But I guess that's an important part of any leader's role. And at any level, I certainly know when I play on the football pitch, I'm shouting at everyone, but mainly only when if they try to do the wrong thing. I'd never shout at anyone if they're trying to do the right thing. But yeah, I guess it's important, and I'm sure he puts his arm around him in the changing room. Obviously, we saw a few years ago in the documentary, didn't we? And in the live game, actually, the huge ruckus he had with Hugo Lloris. So it's in there. It's definitely in there for him. And you don't get to the elite level of world football if you don't have that passion and that care and that energy. But yeah, it's just sad that it was such a poor result last night, really. And I hope Sonny's injury is okay. I'm now really worried about his injury.
Yeah, I'm concerned about that strapping. Hopefully, it does seem something he's been carrying for a while because he keeps going off, looking in a lot of pain, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And then he seems to be okay for the next game somehow. Apollo says Udogie is 20 years old. I think this is reacting to that clip where he's literally being clotheslined a few times and somehow just seems to. I think it was Kaleba. I think it is tries to. Twice he has a go at him. He can't stop him. Then Gross has a go at him. Can't stop him. He's such a physical specimen for a 20-year-old. It's quite incredible, and he's only going to get better, isn't he, Destiny?
So good. Unbelievable player. I think the most talented young player we've got in the team. As I said, he'll be in the Premier League Team of the Year, I predict. Certainly in the young player nominees list, if not winning that trophy. And we're very lucky to have him. I'm just watching that clip over and over again. It's unbelievable. What I love about it is he beats the guy tries to clothesline him down, and then Destiny almost takes it as a personal affront that this player has the gall to try and tackle him again. So he's like, all right, I'm going to beat you one more time.
And that's in the 99th minute as well.
Absolutely mugs him off. And 99th minute, incredible stamina. What a player.
Incredible. CIY, I don't know how to pronounce it, says most goals contributed in the Premier League in December 2023. We touched on this. Son is leading the way now. He's on 7. He's now ahead of Solanke, Wood and Bowen, who are both, Solanke's on 6, Wood and Bowen on 5. So look, Cole contribution-wise having good December.
He's up there with the Chris Woods of this world. Never did we think we'd say that. Never did we think we'd see the day.
Absolutely spot on. Brian Hill on Instagram yesterday after the result said, not the result we wanted, and we were far from our best. Time to recover and work for the next game. Come on, you Spurs. Nice for him, obviously, to come out and acknowledge that.
Very good of Brian Hill's social media manager to come out with that straight after the game. We appreciate that, Brian.
Lovely from Brian. Alex says, we nearly have a full starting 11 of players injured/suspended that are missing the Bournemouth game on Sunday. Add Son and Sarr to this later. Extraordinary. I've not seen anything like this in my life. Not so much bad luck. We need to invest heavily in January, but it won't happen. Looking at that team he's displayed there, I mean, I'm guessing this is for January because of because Son's included. I mean, where does that team finish in the Premier League? That team you're looking at now.
All I can say is that I mean,
except for Sarr in goal potentially.
All I can say is I feel incredibly strongly that if that Chelsea game had gone differently and Romero hadn't got sent off, I think we would have continued the kind of level of play we had in that first 20 minutes. We would have won that game, and I think we would be ahead of Arsenal now. I really do. Maybe we'd be level with Liverpool, but I really do. I think that's as good as I can say, really. That's not how football works. It does not played on paper, etc., etc. But, we've had a bit of bad luck. We're rolling with the punches. Let's, as I said the other day again, let's try and get to the end of January, pick up as many points as we can before then, stay in the cup if we can. If we're in the cup by February, a bit of luck here or there, I fancy a run.
Definitely. Yeah, but looking at that team is absolutely crazy. That is a really good starting 11, and that's a team of players who are
actually, do you know what? This brings up something that I've been meaning to ask you over the last couple of episodes we've been doing. Is there any part of you that thinks Ange could make Ryan Sessegnon believe in himself again? I
was having this discussion with Ben, and I said, I probably look right now. I probably would say that Sessegnon still. I mean, is he an Ange player? Where does he even fit in? Is he a left winger? Is he a left back? I don't really know where Ange would see him, but I think if he's a left winger, there's a slight chance that maybe he could get something out of him because actually he will stick wide. He is left-footed.
It's unbelievable delivery of the ball.
He's got really good delivery. If he can stay injury fit, he's still young enough that he's got time on his side. Moving forward and we saw what he can do.
It's about belief
Fulham.
With him, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Self-belief, and he, I think I've said it before, but those times where he gets substituted and you see him trudge around the outside of the pitch and his head down, he just got to a stage where he didn't believe in himself anymore, and maybe that's the lack of confidence, kind of knowing that he's always playing on, not able to give 100% because of injuries. But I think if there's any manager who could make a player believe in himself and show him videos of him at his best, and maybe you're right, maybe play him on that left side, maybe we can get a tune out of him again. I'm not willing to end Sessegnon's career at Spurs yet. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think maybe I think second half of the season, if he can get a few more opportunities, once he's really injury free and he's not got those risks of recurring hamstring injuries again. Who knows what Ange can do with him? I definitely see him as a winger, though, because Do I think he could do that inverted role that Udogie does? I'm not convinced. Although at the beginning of the season, a lot of people said Udogie wouldn't be able to do that.
And Porro.
And look at how they're doing. So I wouldn't completely rule it out.
We'll see.
Football Confidential says Lo Celso doing Lo Celso stuff. I do wonder, what do you reckon Lo Celso actually said to him?
I honestly have no idea. The fact that he's covering his face while doing it is just mortifying to me.
Yeah, I do wonder, because João Pedro was not happy with what was something he said. I don't know what he was commenting on. I'm trying to think what Lo Celso could be saying to him.
I mean,
but,
could he have said, "You've played really well and I haven't"? Like, do you know what I mean? There's literally nothing. There's no like leverage Lo Celso had against João Pedro in that game. They like what was it, 4-1 at the time or something?
Yeah, I think it might have been 4-2 at the time.
Sometimes just keep your mouth shut, I think.
Yeah, I do. Get us in the comment section. What do we think he said? Squawk says, no Tottenham defender has provided more Premier League assists in a single season than Pedro Porro. Big Ange experiment is a success. Yeah, we've touched on it before. Obviously, Porro's doing absolutely brilliant at the moment with his delivery. I don't know if anyone saw this clip doing the rounds yesterday of an little Arsenal fan after the game yesterday. Oh, can you scroll down? Yeah, there you go. I mean, I was absolutely laughing at this one yesterday, and look, little Arsenal fans crying after a game never ceases to amuse me. So absolutely fantastic stuff there. Was not happy after the game.
Looks like he's wearing an Aaron Ramsdale kind of shirt as well. I'm sure Ramsdale's probably crying as well.
He said it was his first Arsenal game. Absolutely love it. Spurs Express says, this is from Vicario on Instagram, says, not a good night for us. Heads up, we have a match on Sunday. Focus on, obviously.
Here's my question. When the social media managers post the post-game comments for players, are they on a like per Instagram post payment? That's what I wonder. Like, are they being paid a day rate, in which case they're waiting all day just to wait for the end of the end of the night where they post something bland, or are they on a per Instagram post payment? I'm just waiting for the first Spurs player to have a say something like, those ones.
Yeah,
where
right.
Say something
and
like.
And Ichibi, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah. One of them is bound to slip up. Dan Kilpatrick says, a rough night for Spurs for 75 minutes, which underlined their need for a more in-depth January. But given so much of their season is about vibes, the late rally felt important. This ended up more like the defeats to Chelsea and Villa, where there were some positives to build on. Do you agree with that? Was the takeaway yesterday more that we nearly gave it a really great go at the end and nearly got back into the game, or was the overall narrative how poor we were for the first 75 minutes?
You can't forget how poor we were, but I think he has put really succinctly what I was trying to say earlier, which is sometimes those momentum shifts can really affect you going into the next game as well. And the vibes thing is true. It is a lot about, how you're feeling, and maybe they'll just have 5% more in their legs because they nearly made something happen in that last 15 minutes.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Alejo Feliz on Instagram as well, another curated Instagram post, says, not the result we wanted, but we'll keep fighting. Happy to score my first goal with this amazing club. I hope it's the first of many more. I mean, considering his English isn't very great, I'm assuming he didn't post it himself, but look, delighted for him.
He loves the club. All he's learned is amazing club, and I'm happy with that. Well done, Feliz. I think he definitely wrote that one himself from the changing room. I'm sure of it.
Absolutely. Spurs, which says, Destiny Udogie completed more final third passes and created the most chances between Brighton and Spurs today. One of the few bright spots. Look, I mean, sometimes stats can be misleading, but that is definitely a positive thing that he was able to have such an impact on the game from his position, which is fantastic.
He's an absolute beast.
Absolute beast. James Moore says, to have what at the start of the season would have been first choice midfield three and two centre-backs all out at the same time is obviously massively unlucky, but only having two centre-backs the manager trusted for at least half the season was always utterly bonkers, and it has clearly cost Spurs. Would you say not, being more forceful in investing in a centre-back in the summer has really cost us this season? And that obviously goes down to, who's to blame for that?
I think there's an argument to say that maybe the Sanchez sale after the deadline was, in hindsight, a mistake. But let's face it, none of the fans abusing the club for not investing in another centre-back like Davinson Sanchez anyway. I think it's probably likely that the players that Spurs were interested in terms of having another centre-back weren't available at a price we could afford. And unfortunately, these days, you also have to take into account financial fair play. So maybe they looked at Todibo as well then, and he wasn't available at a price they could get, or what have you. James Moore, I really like James Moore. I love the View from the Lane podcast, and he's a great journalist. He is a little bit on the glass half empty side a lot of the time. I think he wouldn't mind me saying that. And I think what I love about Ange is he's not going to take any players that don't fit his style and what he wants attributes-wise exactly. And I think the reason we didn't buy another centre-back is probably because that player didn't become available at a price that we could pay. So it's not quite as simple as saying it's utterly bonkers if you ask me. And yes, we've been unlucky with injuries and suspensions.
That's a fair opinion. Killian says 6 points off top, 4 points off second, 3 points off third. Only one more Premier League game with no Van de Ven. Transfer window opens on Monday. Karma. And I think that's a fair point. I mean, I know a lot of people are very angry, disappointed with the defeat yesterday. And even in general, I know we've had some poor results in recent weeks, albeit we are off the back of 3 wins in a row before yesterday. But I think, anyone going overboard, I think if you look at the overall situation, it's still very positive and more things to be excited about than negative about for sure at the moment. Completely
agree. And that's what I'm trying to kind of manifest for all of our Spurs fans. I'm a little reticent to say that we'll only have one more Premier League game without Van de Ven. I think it's a hamstring injury, and the last thing we'd want is a reoccurrence of that. So maybe drip feed him in a bit slower. But yeah, it's definitely all positive for me.
Alan says, Ange looked into the camera like he was in the office. Obviously I was at the games, I didn't see this, but I wonder what he was reacting to, if it was maybe a penalty given or not. But it does seem to be a little wink at the camera, doesn't it?
I thought that, I could be wrong, but I thought that was when Kulusevski got the tackle and there was no VAR sending off.
That would,
because that was horrible, actually. Really horrible tackle. And I think he was shaking his head a little bit, kind of feeling like, oh, we don't get the rub of the green when it comes to that stuff, but they just did. But to be honest, if I'm going to say devil's advocate to that, if we're going to get a player sent off against us, I'd actually rather it hadn't been at that moment. I'd rather take it at some point down the line when we're at 0-0 or 1-0 up or something.
Yeah, that's fair. That's
obviously
fair.
Life doesn't work like that, but you know what I mean.
I know what you're talking about. Cody Mack, big up Cody, says, if there was a time to back a manager unconditionally, now would absolutely be it. Worst injury crisis I can remember. Don't start the ball in motion. Next thing, it will be a constant questioning in the media. Back Postecoglou. Do you agree with that? Do you think? I mean, a lot of people said that about Conte. We really, after that first 6 months he had in charge, we really need to back him, unconditionally. And then things did we did spend a lot of money and things did kind of fall apart. Do you feel like Ange, in these first 6 months has really earned that kind of that credit in the bank at the moment?
I do. I wonder if when he talks about backing him unconditionally means, throw unlimited funds at it this January. Now, sure, yeah, I think that would be great. But I think you have to take into account how hard it is to get players from other clubs in January. So basically, you're looking at a markup of probably between, 40 and 50% on their value to get them out of a club in January. And especially the beginning of, add on the beginning of January at that. Clubs are not going to want to sell at the beginning of January because they're like, I know I can get more money in 25 days' time. The fans aren't going to like this, but I'm sure they've read the article as well. There have been articles before that basically said Daniel Levy doesn't even turn his phone on till the 25th. So although Ange, I think, wants players in at the beginning of January, I'm not sure how realistic that is, sadly. I'd love to be proven wrong. I would love to be proven wrong. But I do think we are going to back Postecoglou unconditionally, by which I mean I think whoever he wants, in a similar way with Mickey van de Ven, we will push the boat out to get that player as long as it doesn't go against financial fair play situation. And whether or not those players do genuinely come available in January, there's a lot of talk about Todibo, obviously. I think if we say Todibo is worth 40 million on the market, I think they're probably currently asking for 60. And Levy is thinking maybe I can get him for 45, 48 towards the end of the window. That is, of course, frustrating to fans. And they look at Man City and they say, well, Man City do it. Why don't we do it? Because they're run by a state and they cheat. It's as simple as that. We're not going to financially dope. We're not sports washing. And therefore, we're not throwing money around like Todd Bowley has either. And they've also been cooking the books. So it's difficult. I'd love to be proven wrong and get a player in on the 1st of Jan. Can't see it happening, but I do think we are going to support Big Ange. I think Levy has the perfect manager for Tottenham, because I don't think Ange is going to say to him, I need £100 million players like Conte would. 60 to £100 million players. I think he's like, 30, 40 million pound players that I can mould as well, young with potential sell-on value as well. So I think he will back him over the next 4 or 5 transfer windows.
Actually, reading this tweet again, I do think he's actually might be talking about the fans backing him unconditionally rather than the club. Well, also I think, I understand every manager deserves criticism at times, but I agree. I think everyone should really be behind Postecoglou at this point, considering the job he's done. 100%.
I would go as far as to say if you're questioning Ange Postecoglou in terms of being manager of Tottenham at this stage, then you need to give your head a wobble, because some of the stuff we've had to sit through has been absolute dross. And all you have to do is look over at Manchester United, and I promise you, all of their fans are looking at Spurs at the moment and going, I would love to have your manager. I would love to have someone who is unconditionally single-minded about the style of football. And if he was at Man United now, they would not be playing the dross that they are playing. So I think, enjoy it.
Absolutely agree. The next tweet, I think we can roll over that one because I think we've reacted to that already. Harry Brooks says, the squad is not built in Ange's image and it's been decimated by injuries and suspensions to a level I've never seen before. Games and results like tonight are going to happen, and if you can't accept that, you'll be forever disappointed. I think that's a fair comment. That's something we've been saying, isn't it? That at this point in the process, nothing's going to be perfect, and you will get results like yesterday where things just go against you.
Harry Brooks, hello Harry, one of the most dangerously commonsensical people on Twitter, on X. He is a great coach, coaches youth players to a really excellent high level. And I've interviewed him before and I've met him before. He's actually scored 5 penalties past me before. I had to give him 100 notes. And he just talks in common sense. He's not reactive. And everything he's saying there is exactly what we've been talking about. And I know it's annoying to some people. And yes, football can make you angry and bad results can make you upset and they can ruin your Christmas. But of course it's going to happen. And of course you need to remain patient and realistic. Man City have had, before the last game, hadn't won in 5 or something? They had a terrible run. No one is running away with this. The standard of the Premier League is so high. And everything he's saying about the squad not being in our image, in Ange's image, and the decimation by injuries is totally true. So just enjoy the ride. There are going to be ups and downs, but this is going to end beautifully, is my prediction.
Yeah, I completely agree. Spurs ITK Hub says, too little, too late. Generally had the chance to make it 4-4 unbelievably. Very, very poor on the most part, though. Has to be better this weekend. Can't let that ending brush over the rest of the game. Yeah, and look, we all have to agree that for the first 75 minutes, we were poor. It was a good ending. I'm just hoping we can take that a bit of momentum that we had at the end into the Bournemouth game, and hopefully that can stand us in good stead. But look, of course, we can't ignore that for 75 minutes we were totally outplayed, and that was the reality. Yappy says, that's a red card all day. I'd be fuming the other way around. Refs were on our side today, if we're being honest. I'm guessing he's a Brighton fan, Yappy. Yeah, and looking at that image, I mean, I've seen the challenge back. It was a carbon copy of Romero's against Chelsea, I felt like, in terms of he won the ball, but the follow-through was high. It was a bit out of control as well. Dangerous, I would say. And I think in a perfect world... He's got
a straight leg as well.
Like,
it's a straight leg. So that they talk about some of these have not been given because it's not been a straight leg. You can't honestly tell me that his foot isn't halfway up his shin, up his ankle.
It was dangerous. And, you heard Postecoglou's, I'll mention it after the game, he said VAR saw everything today apart from a challenger we could have lost a player from. He was frustrated with that. So I have to agree. I mean, at that point, 100% that was a red and they got away with one.
I was surprised that I thought he was going to go off injured. I was surprised that he jumped up. He's a strong boy.
Yeah, because Donnelly was stripped off, wasn't he? But he didn't end up coming on. Yid Army OOC says, random Argentinian versus Haaland regen. Valise now has the same amount of Premier League goals as Rasmus Højlund. So sees what 70 million can get you. Same amount as 13 million apparently. Yeah. Lovely stuff. Spurs OTM says, what a save from Vicario. This was, for me, save of the match. I thought he reacted so well to get fingertips on that little chip, albeit João Pedro maybe could have got the ball a bit higher, but I thought it was a phenomenal save that from Vicario. Really, really difficult.
Yeah, do you know what he did well, right? He didn't rush at his feet and he stays on the 6-yard line and he makes João Pedro make a decision. So what you mostly see with dinks over the keeper is when the keeper's diving at their feet, and actually he's tried to dink him when he's still on his feet, and that enables him to make the save. And I agree, it's a top class save.
Yeah. Just getting it wide as well. SBTR says, when Ange starts Roy out centre-back instead of Phillips on Sunday, it starts a whole fight. I mean, look, I don't know if it will cause that kind of reaction. Maybe if he feels that. But I thought at one point as well, was Phillips ready to come on yesterday? I thought, someone said that in the crowd, maybe not. But again, yeah, as you say, if Phillips comes in and has a really poor performance, we might never see him again. So you just got to be very careful, especially right now when we got a whole makeshift defence. Yeah. To put him alongside of Ben Davis, who's already at fullback, it's going to be a very, very risky.
I think you bring him on alongside Romero or Van der Ven at best. But also, as I said a couple of days ago, Phillips went away with the England unders at 19s or 18s or whatever it was, and he didn't even get on the pitch. So, he's potential. I think he's potential at this point. We've seen something in him. We paid a couple of £1 million to get. It's an opportunistic signing. I'm not sure necessarily he's ready for first team action. But if he plays, and he is, I'll be the first to hold my hands up.
Tottenham Hotspur tweeting out saying first of many Alejo. I have to be fair, I've actually never seen anyone so happy to score a goal at 4-1 down than Alejo, but I understand it. I understand it. I'm delighted for him because 19 years of age, new country, new club, like it's
I think it's the first good chance he's had as well.
Probably,
one chance and he didn't snatch at it, he put it away.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Absolutely right. Spurs Express says Vicario is the only reason why the scoreline isn't currently one which humiliates Tottenham. I think we can all agree with that. We've touched on that as well. Paul O'Keefe says, if you think about it, it's mental, the stick. I don't know if I like this on. Anyway, I'll read it out. If you think about it, it's mental, the stick that Moyes gets really won them a European trophy, keeps them competitive in the Premier League when they're not realistically who can challenge a team who can challenge for the top. Not sure what people expect. He has them at 33 points after 19. They're actually only 3 points off us, West Ham.
They are, but they're absolute dross. That's the good news. Listen. Moyes' ball is absolutely designed for games like last night, games at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, when they can sit back, try and nick a couple of goals, ideally from set pieces. It's the games where they have to come out and play where West Ham are at their most dross. And I think, they're on a good run, good for them, they're doing the best they can, but it is classic and something we've had to deal with before, where your team are getting results, but you're hating the style of football that they're playing. And West Ham fans are hating it.
And it's not sustainable, is it?
It's not sustainable. All the stuff that we've had to deal with over the last few years under Conte and Jose and all the stuff the pundits say and the fans say, it's proven not to be sustainable with us. Sure, they're doing well, but if it's not making their fans happy, then what's the point?
All right, and I think that is it for Reacts for this version. That is all we have for that one as well. But even though it's a review stream, it doesn't stop here. The show does go on because Spurs do play Bournemouth on Sunday, 2 p.m. On what is set to be a very, very tricky game for Spurs, especially off the back of that really damaging defeat. It's going to be really difficult to turn our fortunes around against a Bournemouth side. Bang in form at the moment. 7 wins out of their last 9 games so far in the Premier League. Iraola is right now producing probably the form team in the Premier League, which is crazy to think about considering he was on the brink of being sacked near the beginning of the season. You look at the form on the table, on the screen right now, last 5 games, they've won 4, drawn 1. They're in outstanding form. Look at that goals conceded as well. 4 goals conceded, 13 scored. Away from home. Look at that. 4 consecutive wins away from home, and they do travel to the Tottenham Stadium, obviously, on Sunday.
Sounds familiar, though, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's exactly the form that Everton were in when they came to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So, look, we had a bad result against Brighton, but I'm choosing, as ever, to try and remain positive. And I think, I'm not suggesting it's going to be an easy game by any means, but I think hopefully we should have enough in those forward areas, especially if Son can be not injured. I'm a bit worried about his injury, to score some goals past them. Everton hadn't conceded a goal in like 400 minutes or something scored by the opposition, and we scored 2 in the first 20 minutes. We need that atmosphere to be big. We need to get behind the team, get us a couple of early goals, and then be able to play our football.
Yeah, and I hope home advantage really makes a big difference, because I think even though we did go through that period, didn't we? We lost 3 consecutive home games. I do think at home we just look that bit more intense and aggressive, don't we? I feel.
And we didn't deserve to lose any of those home games either. We played pretty well, I thought.
Yeah, and we do have that air of dominance. I feel like away from home, I think we do. I'm not saying we're bad, but I don't think we have that control of games, which we do at home. We do seem to be create more chances. We do seem to get on top of teams a lot more. And even though, on those occasions we haven't been getting results, we showed against Newcastle. We can be very, very intense. Albeit Everton definitely should have probably come away with something in our last home game, and they came into that game in great form, and they were really unlucky not to take away something. I think home advantage hopefully should be crucial in this game against Bournemouth. And even though Bournemouth have won their last 4 games, I mean, I'll look at the games they have won. I don't think they're going to have as big a challenge as us. At home.
And it's only human nature that teams, when they're faced with 60,000 opposition fans, are not going to be able to play as progressively as they are when they're in front of their own fans. Bournemouth will try, and they'll come at us and try and play their football, and that will leave gaps for us to play into too short. They're going to make chances. Again, every Spurs game I go into, I say, bet on plus 2.5 goals, bet on both teams to score. It's an absolute given. I'd say the same thing against Bournemouth. And I think there'll be goals, there'll be lots of chances, it'll be fun. It's New Year's Eve. What's not to love about it? But I fancy us. I think last night's result will result in a bit of a bounce back. Hopefully that last 10 minutes made the players kind of get a bit more kind of, almost like a bit more in their legs than they would have had if we'd lost 4-0. And I still think, even though we're decimated by injuries, I still think we've got enough on that pitch to cause them loads and loads of trouble. And I don't know, yeah, Bournemouth have been on a great run, but do I feel like their squad is full of players who, let's say if they went 1 or 2-0 down, could fight back in the way Everton did? I think Everton have a bit more experience about them, to be honest. And so I'm hopeful that if we can get the first goal, and that was the first time we conceded the first goal in a long while last night. Hopefully if we can get the first goal, really put them under some pressure and make it a really happy new year going into then that Burnley game, cup game in the early new year.
On the Friday night, yeah, 100% agree with that. If you look back to, obviously this is the first time as well we're going to have played a team twice, or played a team again after facing them in the first half of the season. So we played Bournemouth, obviously, earlier in the season. We did win 2-0. I think it was goals from James Maddison and Kulusevski. It was a really nice, comfortable victory away at Bournemouth. But that was in August. Obviously, it's two very different... it feels like two very different teams at this point now, because obviously we've got all those injuries. Yeah. We're a completely different outfit at this point, even though we were very good at that point. Iraola as well has had a lot more time with his team. They look a completely different outfit. So in terms of when you look back at that 2-0 victory we had in August, can you take too much? Can you learn too much from that game going into this game, or do you have to think of it as a completely different outfit?
Yeah, no, I don't know if you can take too much from it, to be honest. We were absolutely banging our good period with our first 11 absolutely nailed down, and they were just kind of classically trying to get to grips with a real change of style, similarly to how we had to do. I'd say the main difference is our players are better players in terms of their ability to take on the coaching and the style quicker. It's taken Bournemouth's squad a bit longer, but they are definitely a big threat. I really like that player Semenyo, who I think I've seen him tending to play on the left, but they probably switch around a little bit. He's really, really dangerous. And obviously Solanke's in great form. So yeah, not too much that we can learn from that. It says Lloyd Kelly's injured, which is a good one for the script, because it would be classic in the ways that script are written against Spurs sometimes, for Lloyd Kelly, who we've been interested in buying for a transfer window or two to score against us. So I'm pleased about that. But Ange will be saying, we need to take the game by the scruff of the neck, make sure we're the team dominating, make sure that it's other people talking about us. How do they stop us? That's the important part. Make sure that we're the team on the front foot, make chances. We've got players in good form for scoring and assisting goals in Richarlison and Son. Porro's making a lot of assists, as we've talked about. And yeah, I just see no reason why on a big day like that, with the fans really up for it, we can't go and get another 3 points and put more pressure on those teams above us.
Yeah, touching on Dominic Solanke, obviously 13 Premier League goals for him this season. It's obviously his real breakout season when it comes to goal scoring form in the Premier League. He's being much talked about, even a potential outside shot of making the Euros come the summer. He's been talked about as a potential move to one of the top 6 teams as well. We saw how much joy João Pedro got out of our backline on last night. With Emerson and Davis really struggling to contain him. Is that something that we have to be worried about going into Sunday?
I think one thing I'd say is Solanke's a bit more of a physical presence. So if there's one thing that might make me wonder whether he'd be tempted to bring Eric Dyer back into that back four, it might be that some crosses coming in. Solanke's very good in the air. In his hat-trick the other week, he scored 2 great headed goals. I think João Pedro was very good on the floor and giving us a lot of trouble kind of in terms of his mobility and ability to hold the ball up, but also get round the outside and make piercing runs. So he might be tempted to do that with Dyer, but my instinct is that with Dyer, he said to him, "You're not part of my plans. You can find yourself another club." And really what it's a matter of is I think from everything I hear, maybe Dyer wants to go back to Sporting Lisbon, and Sporting Lisbon don't want to pay a fee because they know they can get him in 6 months' time. So it's whether Dyer can negotiate something with Levy to get away early for kind of a nominal fee. So with that in mind against Solanke, I think if it is Royale and Dyer, he will cause them trouble with his physicality. He's on a great run of form in terms of his finishing. So if he gets chances, I'd fancy him to put them away. But we've got to make sure we do better at stopping crosses from coming in and closing down players, not just when it comes to crosses, but long shots as well. We saw it with that goal in the top corner. You don't put that in the top corner if someone properly closes you down. It was like they looked at Estupiñán and they were like, you haven't got it in your locker to do that. And he proved that he does. And at top level, if players are given that much space, they have a 1 in 10 chance of putting it in the top corner like that. So we need to learn from that, be closing down players, be pressing players, and be at 100%. Because we need to get as many points as we can between now and when our players get back at the end of January, which I look at as the kind of the max length of time before we have hopefully a full squad to choose from.
Yeah, looking at that lineup there from Bournemouth, which I think is the one that they've been playing for the majority of their, someone in the comments actually corrected me saying they've won 8 of their last 10, apparently, not 7 of 9, which is incredible form, absolutely incredible form. We've got to give them so much credit. One player I also want to talk about is Alex Scott there in centre mid. He's a player who was heavily linked with Tottenham in the summer. We didn't obviously push the button on him, and we allowed him to go to Bournemouth. They signed him for a decent.
City, right?
That's correct. He's a boyhood Tottenham fan.
Yeah.
I think he was one of the players of the season last year in the Championship. He has been injured for the majority of the season, but has recently come back into the team following his return from injury. I don't know if you saw against Fulham, he got one of the assists of the season, I felt, dribbling past 2 or 3 players and setting up Clive for his goal. Is he one you're kind of disappointed we've missed out on? Is he, being a boyhood Tottenham fan as well, obviously there are question marks when you're in the Championship, can you make that step up? But he really does seem to be performing very well at the moment in the Premier League. Yeah,
well, I should say it doesn't maybe it's not so surprising then that they've really improved since he has come into the team, because he was injured when he signed. And so he missed the first kind of maybe 6, 7, 8 games of the season. Big talent. I think possibly Spurs have been burnt a little bit buying young players straight from the Championship in the last 5 years. And I'm thinking of Spence and Rodon specifically. Whereas, let's say, go back to 15 years ago when we were buying players from the Championship specifically and younger players because they'll have sell-on clauses. We did really well out of that. I think now we're in a position, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but we're in a position where maybe we look at someone like Scott and we say, well, why don't you move to a lower level Premier League team first? We'll keep our eyes on you. A bit like what happened with Maddison back in the day as well. We were linked with him back when he was at Coventry and at Norwich. And we let him kind of get his move to the Premier League and prove himself, and then we'll spend the money on him when he's kind of more in his prime. So it wouldn't surprise me, and you can call me on this, wouldn't surprise me if maybe in 2, 3, 4 years' time, Scott came to Tottenham Hotspur. Big fan of the club, a Spurs player for sure, and would suit Ange Ball. But I don't think they looked at him and thought he's going to get straight into the first 11, and so they weren't willing to pay. What did they end up paying?
25 million.
25 million quid. So there you go.
Yeah, and I think as well, he might have been injured at the time as well, so maybe that played into their thinking. He's only just become fit in recent weeks, so he would have been unavailable for a lot of the season as well.
What did we pay for Benting for?
We paid like 20 million, so it would have been more than one.
So it's like,
that.
They are going to be more likely to spend that money on a player who is a Uruguayan international playing at Juventus than they are a player who's never played in the English top flight. And that to me is a perfect example of the English player tax and the English club to English club tax. You're paying an absolute premium. It's far less of a risk for Bournemouth because they can bed him in. He can become a main man at their club almost straight away, and they feel pretty confident they'll get a sell on. They'll end up selling him for more than 50 million for sure.
In terms of the narrative of just Bournemouth season, obviously they sacked Gary O'Neill quite unexpectedly at the end of last season. Then Iraola comes in. He goes winless for the first 9 games, and Gary Neal seems to be doing a good job at Wolves. It did seem at the time, or was it a mistake to sack Gary Neal and bring in Iraola? Why did we do that? Essentially, that's what a lot of Bournemouth fans were saying at the time. But he has really turned things around recently. They're now up to, pushing the top half, level on points, I think, with Wolves and Gary Neal's Wolves at the moment. Do you think they're better now than they were last season under Gary Neal?
Hard to say, to be honest. I think they're trying to play probably a more expansive game. But what I'd say is these runs can happen, and then in the same way you can get an injury or two, have a bit of bad luck, and you can be on a run of 10 winless games as well. So the only reason I'm bringing that up is because those narratives can change so quickly, and they're mostly led by, Sky Sports, to be honest, a lot of the time. And I remember specifically, they did an interview with Bournemouth chairman, the American guy, on the pitch side at one of their early games, and they basically were alluding to the fact, you've taken a big risk sacking Gary O'Neill. He's doing great at Wolves. How do you feel about it? And he was like, look, we just got a feeling that this guy who we're bringing in as manager is going to lead us to a better place in the longer term. And fair play to them. They've got the courage of their convictions. They stuck by him through a difficult start when the narrative was already beginning to say, oh, you've made a mistake and you're going to get relegated. And now they're playing some good stuff. But it can turn very quickly, and it could turn very quickly for Gary O'Neill at Wolves as well. But I was very impressed with O'Neill at Wolves Gary O'Neill when he was on Sky Sports talking about how he trains Wolves specifically for each game. And all the managers are doing that, but he's just gone out in the press and actually said it to camera. So they're both obviously very talented managers, but I couldn't say for sure that they're in a better place, because he might have taken them to this situation as well.
All right, so having said all that, going into Sunday, what is your score prediction for Bournemouth at home?
3-1 Spurs.
3-1 Spurs. I do really see us struggling to win this one, just because Bournemouth had that little bit extra day's rest. They're in great form. I really see them coming in confident mood to the Tottenham Stadium. I do think home advantage does make a difference. I just looked at our performance on Thursday night. We do seem to be lacking in a bit of form and fitness. I actually wouldn't be surprised if we come out a bit come out flying out the traps a bit, maybe take the lead. But I just got a feeling as the game goes on, Bournemouth might start to take control of this game. And will we have the energy to counteract that as the game goes on?
Yes.
I do see us struggling. You think we will? I hope we will. I hope I'm wrong.
Against it, because you said a draw for last night's
match and we lost.
It's your fault.
So it's my fault.
It's your fault.
I am going to say 2-2. That is why
you
I reckon.
said that before.
I know. And look, I did predict us to struggle. We did struggle. That is what I'm thinking. But I hope the players aren't watching. That's all I'm going to say.
I don't know if you saw this, but in one of the watch-alongs with Marlon, it was Everton. They got a corner, and he said, "I've got a bad feeling about this." And then they scored, and I said, and I had to go, "You are now not allowed to say you have a bad feeling about anything ever again."
He says that from every corner.
He didn't say he had a bad feeling ever again, and we didn't concede again. So,
all right.
I'm 100%. I'm 100% right at this point.
All right, that's probably a good way of going about it. So maybe that's a food for thought. To be fair, though, I literally predict Spurs to win most games, and it doesn't really make that much of a difference. People usually call me deluded. I go, we'll win at the Etihad, no problem. We'll win at the Emirates, and then I'm pretty deluded. So I am predicting 2-2, though. I do see a bit of a struggle, but I hope I'm wrong. I think we do have the quality to beat Bournemouth with that team we have there. I think we're just really struggling on empty. I don't think I'm not saying we're going to draw and this is going to be a symptomatic of our results or form going forward. I just think we're going through a very tough period at the moment. And I know we got those 3 wins, but even in those wins, I think we performed better in games that we lost than some of the wins that we've had. It's just funny how things work sometimes with Spurs and with football in general. But I'm going with the 2-2 draw. Let me know in the comment section below your prediction.
You've actually got a comment from the Southview Coys boys saying, "Except Brighton at home last season, Sim." Well, obviously listening in about the superstition stuff.
No, fair enough. I think I predicted us to lose that game because we were on terrible form. We ended up just about winning, but we deserved to lose that game, that's for sure. Keith Ryan says, "Sim, lol, every game last season you said we would win and Conte is the best thing ever to happen to Spurs." Well, you can't be right on everything, can you?
No, I admit, I hold my hands up. When Conte came, I thought he was exactly what we needed. And for a while I was willing to put up with the dross, but in hindsight, no.
Yeah, it got to a point where it was too much. All right, and last but not least for today's show, we do have a predicted lineup for the Bournemouth game. So we're going to go through the team we expect to see on Sunday. And let's get into that. First of all, the injury graphic. grows ever longer because Dejan Kulusevski is added to the list because he is suspended for Sunday's game after picking up his 5th yellow card against Brighton. He is added to Basuma, who's also suspended, and he is added to the rest of the players who are out injured: Perisic, Romero, Bentancur, Van de Ven, Manderson, Sessegnon, and Manor Solomon, who remain injured for Sunday's game. He did obviously mention, he was asked about Van de Ven, whether he mentioned he might have him back for United. He said he was asked to be more specific, is he definitely out for the Burnley game on Friday night? He actually didn't confirm whether he was. He said, not necessarily definitely out, but we'll have to wait and see how he reacts.
They're going to strap him up and wheel him out there.
Wheel him out. Look, he might be doing better than some of our centre-backs right now, just him with a crutch.
Leg, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. But so that is the state of play. Another player out, suspended. So we'll have to wait. So we'll have to see. Look, this is our predicted lineup for the game on Sunday. In goal, obviously, man of the moment, Vicario. He's in the form of his life, had another brilliant game on Thursday. I just hope he's not as tested as he has been in recent weeks on Sunday.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I can only imagine how exciting these predicted lineup formats could be when we haven't got like 47 players out injured and suspended. Like all of the chat you could have, whereas right now we just say, yeah, I think we all know pretty much, other than maybe one or two situations, what the game's going to be. But yeah, Vicario, like we need him more than ever at the moment, playing unbelievable football.
All right. On the right-hand side, Pedro Porro, who, as we mentioned before, did become our all-time assister in a single Premier League season. So hopefully he can extend that on the weekend. He didn't have a brilliant game, I felt, on Thursday. But look, we don't really have an alternative at the moment anyway, so he's obviously going to have to start. Obvious. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Pedro, absolutely vital to the way that Big Ange plays. So, if we were to lose Porro or Destiny for any length of time, I think we'd be in real trouble at the moment because as much as I love Emerson Royale on the ball, if he comes back into right back or when he's playing at centre back, just does not offer any kind of the threat. I mean, I think it's fair to say, I think I'm willing to put myself out there and say that if Emerson Royale had been playing right back this season, he would not be our highest ever assist maker from defence in a season. So all props to Pedro Porro. We need you.
Yeah, definitely right about that. Right centre-back, we are going to stick with Emerson Royale. There has been a few people saying, should we bring back Eric Dyer just because, Solanke, physical presence, he's going to look to bully our centre-backs. Would Dyer be more adept to playing against that kind of striker? I do get the feeling he has kind of told Dyer, he's not in his plans anymore and he's not going to pick him. I think he's going to continue with Emerson Royale, but Emerson's going to have a much better game than he did on Thursday night.
Yeah, I think it'll be a difficult battle for Emerson Royale if he plays centre back up against Dominic Solanke. I think Solanke will get his back in and really try and use his physical might to boss him around. But yeah, it seems unlikely to me he'll bring Dyer back in now because Dyer's confidence must be absolutely shot, to be honest. So I think he'll be more kind of thinking about whether he can get his move in January or hold out for a big signing on fee. But look, Emerson will try his hardest. He'll do his best and. Let's not forget the last 10 minutes yesterday when he was basically playing attacking midfield centre, as far as I could tell. So,
would you be tempted to change it at all? Like, is there anyone you would be tempted to bring in, or do you think we just have to go with him?
I'm pretty consistent when I say that the reason that Dorrington and Ashley Phillips haven't started is because Ange is seeing them in training every day and he doesn't feel they're ready for it. If he was going to throw one of them in, I think it would be at home. I do. So you never know. Seems unlikely.
Yeah, I agree. Partnering him, we're going to go with Ben Davis. Did get a goal on Thursday night. Has actually been in good form by and large. Has actually stepped into that centre-back role really well, but did have with the collective of the rest of the defence, did have a poor game on Thursday. Again, is going to be up against a very physical Dominic Solanke, who's especially Davis with his height issues. Is he kind of someone Solanke will be looking at thinking, I can definitely get someone who's very good in the air. He's definitely going to be thinking about Ben Davis and thinking, I can definitely get the better of him aerially. Yeah,
and I think Davis will try and counteract that by doing what he had been doing very well in the previous kind of 4 or 5 matches yesterday, which is getting in, kind of reading the play and getting in before the ball comes to Solanke's feet, nipping in, nicking the ball and laying it off. He's very good at that. He's a very good reader of the game, incredibly intelligent player. Should mention last night, we haven't mentioned it yet, he did have a really good chance from a header from a corner in that first half. I think maybe we were only 1-0 down or 2-0 down at that point. Ball came across and he just got too much on it and it went over the bar. He's very dangerous attacking-wise. Obviously got that goal and very brave as well. Again, been impressed with his form. Obviously not the best game last night. None of us did have the best game last night, but a key cog in the way we are battling through difficult circumstances at the moment.
Yeah, completely agree. To be fair, he actually is probably, I would say, underrated in the air, considering most people think he gets completely bullied, which he doesn't, but it's still not his strong point.
No, he's 5'8".
Exactly, that is an issue. Destiny Udogie, we're going to put at left back. Another strong showing I felt on Thursday, especially how he ended the game. Wasn't maybe his best first half, but we know he's got unbelievable stamina, unbelievable strength, and hopefully he can be a lot more impactful in this one.
Yeah, I love him so much. I love when he gets the ball on the half turn in those little pockets in between, his back four and midfield, and then drives those runs into the inside left channel. I'd like to see more of him kind of laying the ball out wide and then making that secondary run on and past the penalty spot where he got a goal in a previous home game a couple of games ago. So yeah, vital player, and we missed him whenever he's been suspended and out of the team. And I honestly think, despite the fact he's our left back, he's one of our biggest danger men at the moment in terms of the way that he makes opposition players feel about him. They don't want to press him too high because he can get past them on the half turn. Not many of our players are able to do that in our current side. So very important that he has a good game if we're going to win on Sunday.
In the number 6 position, we are going to put Ollie Skipp back into the team. Obviously, he did actually miss out on Thursday due to a last-minute knock, which wasn't revealed until the lineups came out on Thursday night. But Ange did confirm that he expects Ollie Skipp to be fit for Sunday, and if that is the case, I thought he put in a decent performance against Everton. We did expect him to start on Thursday, which obviously he was out unexpectedly, so I am going to put him in the starting lineup for this one. And I do think in that number 6 position, I do think he shows for the ball a bit more than someone like a Højbjerg, and maybe he's a bit more controlled than a Højbjerg when he's being pressed. But in terms of quality of player, I don't know if there's that much difference, but hopefully in terms of his attributes, it comes up with a much better performance.
Yeah, I was very disappointed that he was out injured yesterday, because I've been saying that what's vital for Ollie Skipp during this period is that he's able to get a rhythm up at the pace of the Premier League and show his full potential, because I feel like it's the last few opportunities he may have to really get an opportunity to prove that he's worth staying in Ange's squad. And then to get a knock and not be able to play yesterday was just at the wrong time. The reason I think we're putting him in our predicted lineup is because Ange chose him over Højbjerg in that Everton game. And therefore, if he's fit again, why wouldn't he do it again? I don't think Højbjerg showed enough last night, to prove any different. I think the one thing he offers that Højbjerg doesn't really is a bit more mobility, a bit more engine to get up and down. Højbjerg's more, his engine is kind of back and across a bit more, whereas I feel like Skipp can get up and down a little bit more. And maybe that little bit more energy does allow him to take the ball past a presser a bit more. But his rhythm isn't quite there yet, so his touch can be quite heavy, and we have to be patient with that if he does play, because he hasn't played enough games. He's only been coming off the bench, really. And if he is going to start, I'm not suggesting that his touch will be perfect straight away, and we need it to be.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, and he needs a bit of patience. But hopefully, if he does come back into the team, I hope that he just shows a bit more care on the ball than maybe Højbjerg has been showing, especially on Thursday. On the number 8 position, we're going to go with Pape Matar Sarr. Did again have a poor game by his standards on Thursday night. Comes up against some really tricky customers in Alex Scott and Ryan Christie in the Bournemouth midfield. So he's definitely going to have that energy about him in this game and make sure he's stopping them from controlling the game. I was very disappointed with how much control those Brighton players did have on Thursday, especially Billy Gilmour seemed to run the game, and hopefully Sarr can prevent that from happening on Sunday.
Yeah, I agree. I thought he was disappointing. I think he will play. But one thing I will say, if Ange was going to throw a young player in, it might be now. It might be he looked at Sarr's performance, thinks he's obviously fatigued. He's about to go off to the AFCON. If he was going to throw in Jamie Donnelly, maybe it would be now and maybe it would be for Sarr. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if it happened, it wouldn't be a shock that threw me to the back of the room. Because a home game, Bournemouth are of course good, but a home game playing in midfield is a possibility where even if you're having not the best game or you're not quite ready for it or whatever, you're able to be a body and you're able to show your engine and your desire. So that is something that can happen. But I think Sarr will play, and I think he'll be stung by not being great and getting taken off quite early yesterday, and will hopefully show a bit more desire in that game than I thought he did. As again with Son, it's very possible, should say, maybe Sarr's carrying a little knock as well. You just don't know. But yeah, I thought he was poor. Gave him a 4 out of 10, and if he plays, I expect him to play better.
All right, next to him is going to be a Giovanni Lo Celso, who's going to come in for the suspended Dejan Kulusevski. I thought he had a pretty bright cameo against Brighton. I actually thought following on from a pretty decent cameo he had against Everton as well. He was asked about Lo Celso in his press conference, and he was asked, why did he fall out of the team? He said he didn't get taken out of the team through form or anything. It was just because he was injured. He lost his place, and I actually think Lo Celso, when he's played majority of the season, he actually played pretty well, and I'm excited to see him back in the team, and hopefully he can bring that creativity to the side. I wouldn't say that's been missing, because I do think Kulu's been quite good in the centre, but maybe that is going to substitute for Kulu's creativity.
Yeah, sure, he's the natural fit, he comes straight in, but now Lo Celso needs to stay fit. It's absolutely vital, because Sarr will be gone, and it'll be Lo Celso and Kulusevski now. For the cup games and for the games in January. So Gio Lo Celso, this is going to be the most important period of his Tottenham career, and he needs to stay fit. He picks up too many little injuries. I'm glad he's going to be playing against Bournemouth, because he's going to offer something that Kulusevski didn't really last night, which is he's going to come deep like Maddison does from that 8 or 10 role and get the ball off his back foot and really start our kind of forward movements from there. And we need more control over the ball than we had last night. So I'm glad Lo Celso is going to be playing, assuming he doesn't get injured before. And we need him to continue playing and get that kind of match fitness up to 100% for that January period. We're not going to have to play loads of games, only 4 probably maximum in January. That's if we get through in the cup. So it's not like he's going to be playing twice a week. So we need him to play, stay fit and play well and really nail down and show us that he can long-term be a great midfield option in this Ange Ball squad.
On the right-hand side of the attack, we're going to stick with Brennan Johnson on the right-hand side. Again, didn't have his best game on Thursday. I seem to be saying that with a lot of our players. But I do feel like overall he is more comfortable on that right-hand side. Again, apart from if you want to maybe bring in Bryan Hill, there aren't too many opportunities to change it as well. So I do think Johnson keeps his place, but hopefully he can be a bit more impactful on that right-hand side. And I do back him to do that against a Bournemouth side who, are very offensive. So hopefully that leaves opportunities for him to exploit some space. Yeah,
I think Brennan Johnson is getting a little bit too much abuse for what he deserves. He's got quite a lot of goal involvements this season. And he is a very raw young player, but I see a lot of potential in him. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if he got another assist or maybe even a goal coming in at the back stick. I like him a lot. I think he's a big talent. I think we paid what we had to pay to get a young English talent through the door. And I think don't write him off too soon, guys. Don't forget, it wasn't long ago people were writing off Kulusevski, said he was rubbish after that first kind of few games under Conte. And he's proven how brilliant he is, and I think Johnson will be a great player for Tottenham Hotspur in the medium to long term.
All right, next up we have Richarlison in the number 9. Obviously, was actually brought off around the hour mark on Thursday night, having probably had a few chances to score, had 2 goals ruled out for offside and did hit the post and also forced a save out of Steele. So did have his opportunities, but was quite, I don't know, was it curious? Would I say curiously taken off after the hour? Because if anyone looked like he was going to score, it did look like to be Richarlison, but he didn't last the 90 minutes. He has been in good form of late before Thursday night. So despite the fact that, maybe Ange did kind of haul him off, we are going to stick with him in that number 9 position, essentially.
Yeah, I think I've said it before, I think his finishing confidence is now fully up. I think he's probably carrying a bit of a knock to his back, which is why he came off. Ange mentioned it after the Everton game. And I think they're being probably just a bit careful with him and wanted to try something different last night because it wasn't working. He just needs to work on the timing of those runs. Is there an opportunity for him to bend his run a bit more, start a tiny bit deeper and bend it around a little bit more? But there's just no room for error now with VAR. He has to realise that. And it's costing us. But really pleased to see those finishes. And the one that hit the post, actually, I haven't really talked about that. But that was a lovely across the keeper effort. Very unlucky. And
was he unlucky to be taken off?
Well, I'm assuming he was injured, to be honest.
Oh, right.
I'm assuming he was injured. But also, if we're going to try something different, then he's always going to put Son in the 9, and Richarlison is the most likely to make way. So I think if we make him chances at the weekend against Bournemouth, I think he'll score.
And then on the left-hand side, there is going to stick with Heung-min Son. Hasn't had the best of times of the last couple games. Doesn't look as comfortable on that left-hand side as he has, in my opinion, in that number 9 position. So if they were going to change it up, it would be maybe just switching Richarlison and Son. I do expect him to keep it the same, though, just because Rishi does look like scoring at the moment when he does have an opportunity. Bournemouth, obviously, their centre-backs, their right back, I think, is Max Aarons, is a pacey one, but not the most physical. So maybe Son might fancy his chances taking him on. But do you see any opportunity of taking Son out of that left-hand side, or do you think he has to start there again?
Well, just that we saw that he had the kind of back of his right knee strapped up against Brighton. That was something I didn't know about, and that kind of scans with him just dropping off 5%. His touch hasn't quite been there, so it feels like maybe he's carrying a bit of a knock into that Asian Cup, which he'll go off to in January. But I agree. I think it's most likely he'll start. He's our captain. Both of our other two vice captains are unavailable. We need his leadership. We need to put him to put in at least one more effort before he goes off to that Asian Cup. And hopefully the kind of momentum and atmosphere and support of the fans can drive him through, and he can get us another assist or two or another goal or two. Because we really need 3 points in this game. It's absolutely huge for the rest of our season, I think, that we get 3 points in this game. Sometimes you can lose at games at Brighton. You can be outplayed. That can happen. But a home game against Bournemouth, I know we did lose, I think, against them last season, didn't we?
We did 3-2
at home. So it's not like it can't happen, but I think we need 3 points in this game big time to set us up for that difficult January ahead.
Yeah, and as well, it's so important that we make use of these players like Sarr and Son before they go off to their respective competitions, because, as you say, we're not going to have them available in January. So if we lose the last game with them available, that's not going to give us good momentum going into January.
Make it a very difficult January.
100%. So let's go through that lineup one more time. The predicted lineup, we've got Vicario in goal, Porro, Emerson, Davis, and Udogie at the back, Skip, Sarr, and Lo Celso along the midfield, with a front three of Johnson and Son behind Richarlison. Barnaby has said it's going to be 3-1 to Spurs. I have predicted, unfortunately, 2-2. Let me know in the comment section below what your predicted lineup would be for this game. But that is all for today's live stream. A mammoth 2.5 hour stream for you guys. So I hope you enjoyed all the content. A real endurance test that was. But appreciate all the comments, all the interaction, all the support for the channel. Big up to everyone. If you want to go in the title as well, go subscribe to the Spurred On podcast if you want to see more of Barnaby Slater, where it gives you daily Spurs content as well. But that is all for today's live stream. We'll see you all very, very soon. Go check out the watch along on Sunday, where me and Barnaby are actually going to be on the watch along on Sunday as well. So stay tuned for that.
We've got a 100% record, haven't
we? We do. So let's keep that going as well. But that is all for today. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.